of a Yeti and then sings a song called Yeti Stomp, which he constantly just shouts Yeti, Yeti, Yeti most of the times when the song is reprised throughout the episode. But after he leaves to go on his adventure, Uniqua comes out with a camera and is followed by Tasha, the first episode featuring her. Uniqua takes a sequence of photos of Tasha and then Tyrone joins in and they take pictures together, and that's when they hear Pablo's Yeti 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 shout. That's when Uniqua thinks that there's a Yeti, but Tasha doesn't believe it. And this is where it starts that debate between Uniqua and Tasha about if a Yeti is real or not, which occurs throughout the episode. So they go off on an adventure to check out if the theory is correct or not. And while doing that, we get this humorous scene of Tasha claiming that she knows a lot about the North, but when she's walking in the wrong direction, Tyrone corrects her and she does a humorous 180s. Nextly, they sing a song called Keep On Snow Going, which is a great song and I really like the beat of it. But then they continue on until they come across raisins that Pablo has dropped. Afterwards, they're on the top of a snow mountain, but because Uniqua is being too loud, she causes a giant snowball to come at the three of them. And Tasha falls behind at first, but thankfully she uses her brain and slides down the snow hill, and Tyrone and Uniqua follow as well. Three thankfully land safe as the giant snowball lands into a lake. Then they have to kayak to the other side of the lake, and this is when one of the iconic songs come into play, Row Your Boat, which I adore, to where I made a short of me dancing to this song. But they all reach shore and they continue on the adventure. But then they come across a snow angel that Pablo left behind, and then this is where it gets to this hilarious song of There's No Such Thing as a Yeti, which continues the debate between Tasha and Uniqua if a Yeti is real or not. Here also mention, I do really feel for Tyrone being in the middle of this debate, as he's not really picking a side and just a tag along to this adventure. Anyways, after that, a blizzard forms, but thankfully the three find an igloo, which belongs to Pablo by the way, and they go inside to stay warm. While Tyrone finds a box of raisins and eats some, this is where Uniqua and Tasha have the reprise of There's No Such Thing as a Yeti. But then they hear Yeti sounds from Pablo and they go outside and circle around the igloo, not knowing that Pablo's right on top of the roof of the igloo. But as soon as he continued to shout Yeti, he accidentally slips and falls into a bank of snow next to the igloo. And as soon as the three check out what's in the snow, Pablo's pair of eyes pop out. And that frightens Tasha to where she runs away, but thankfully Pablo reveals himself to be the Yeti and proving Tasha that she was wrong about a Yeti not being real. Then they all have fun with Pablo playing snowbellies, and the episode concludes. This was a fine episode, although I wish it represented Tasha in a more positive way, because I feel like the way you should introduce Tasha was something that the next episode did better. Now let's get to episode 4, titled with Uniqua reading a book about the flying rock, and then she's joined by Tyrone, Tasha, and Pablo. As she sings the part of the book, Float, Flutter, Fly, she begins to sing it in a more rhythmic tone to where she sings the flying rock song along with everyone else. The four decide to go find it, and the backyard transforms into a desert and a jungle. They're given a binary choice on which route they could take to get to the flying rock. Uniqua and Tasha want to go for the jungle map because they think it's the more easier path, while the boys, Pablo and Tyrone, want to go through the desert path because they think it's way more quicker. So the two argues until Uniqua settles it by splitting the map she has in half so the boys could take the desert area while the girls take the jungle path. So the two duos walk their separate ways. They sing a song called Questing Questing, which is a decent fun song. We first focus on the girls and they come across tangly vines. Uniqua gets tangled first, followed by Tasha, and so they're both stuck. But the vines become very ticklish to them, so they had the idea to continue shaking until they are freed, to which they are successful with. And while they were freeing the songs, they sing a song called Shake Your Body, which I always loved the rhythm. Afterwards, we focus on the boys who are walking through the desert path, and they have to avoid a herd of tumbleweeds that's flying towards them. Now back with the girls, they come across a very unstable bridge, to which when they are in the middle of crossing on it, the bridge planks beneath them begin to break, and once they fall through, they have to hold on to the rope that's still attached to the bridge. Thankfully, they are able to grip on hard on the rope, so they are able to cross the unsteady bridge. And then back with the boys, They stop walking midway up a mound of sand to where they sing a song Trudge, 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 which I enjoy listening to. After some struggle, they spot a cactus at the top and use a rope to grab onto it so they could lift themselves onto the top of the mound sand. Afterward, both sides see the flying rock located on the top of the stone step hill, and they are tied when they reach the top. All four grip the flying rock at once, trying to argue that they won until they somehow lose grip of it and it falls onto the side of the stone step hill and cracks in half. They are all in shock, and then we get this funny short argument where they blame each other for breaking the flying rock. But after some thinking, they decide to work together to fix the rock, so they put it back together, and when they do, all four of them are flying as the rock is lifting them, ascending them into the air, and landing itself back in its place at the top of the stone step hill. The four of them are thrilled with the experience, and that's how episode 13 ends. It's a thrilling episode because it really focuses on the dynamics of these two sides, whether it's Uniqua and Tasha and Pablo and Tyrone. Now for episode 14, which is because it really focuses on the dynamics of these two sides, whether it's they are the cops in this episode. They sing the song Can't Stop the Cops, which I love. I love how they just repeatedly say can't stop the cops. Anyways, afterwards, their motive is to catch two evil robots who plan on turning every nice robot into a bad robot. We see that those bad robots are Tasha and Pablo. They sing a song Bad Bots. They then break into a vault that contains a key that belongs to the factory of robots. And then we get this funny gag of Pablo malfunctioning. Anyways, the cops spot the robots taking the key, and then they escape in their space car, and then a chase ensues. At one point, there's this awkward, hilarious moment where the bad bots and the cops are stopped at a red light, and side by side, they're just waiting until the light turns green so they could continue chasing the bad bots. And this is when the chase takes place inside an asteroid belt, and this is where we get this song, Steer Baby Steer. Afterwards, they all make it out of the asteroid belt, but the bad bots' space car's rear is broken off, so then they have to make a crash landing onto the moon. Then the police officers take the opportunity to arrest them. Then the bad bots use roller skates to roll around the moon until they get to the back of the cops' spacebar, and they use it to drive away, but the cops are able to grab onto the back of it so they wouldn't be left stranded on the moon. The bad bots arrive at the factory, but the cops try to stop them again. They are able to use a magnet to pull the factory key out of Pablo's hands, but Pablo's able to extend his arm to retrieve it back, and they are able to enter the factory. The cops chase the bad bots in the factory until they reach the main room. They surround the bad bots at first, but then they activate springs and they're able to jump around, and this is where Uniqua accidentally bumps into Tyrone with handcuffs on her hand, and she accidentally handcuffs her and Tyrone's arms together. And then Tasha extends her arms to use Tyrone's handcuffs to handcuff his other arm to the pole, so now the cops are stuck. And before the bad bots could win the battle by switching every good bot into an evil one, Pablo has a malfunction again, but this is where Uniqua takes advantage of it and uses her magnet to pull him closer and flip his switch into a good bot, to which Tasha screams no as she has just lost her partner. And then we have a cool song, I Feel Good, sang by Pablo. And during the song, we see Tasha trying to flip his switch back to bad, but she keeps failing. She gives out and decides that she's gonna do it herself, but then she starts to malfunction, and then good Pablo decides to uncuff the cops to have them stop her. And Uniqua has a better idea to flip her switch to good, and now Tasha's a good bot as well. And the cops have saved the day with Pablo and Tasha being good bots now. This was a nice thrilling episode to say the least. It was definitely an interesting concept of cops and robots, especially forms into the laboratory or things to where she sings a song for the backyard. at it. He tries to share it with his friend Tasha, a mad scientist, and she has a lot of plans for things to where she sings the song, I Got a Secret. And despite Austin trying to tell her that it's his birthday, she continues to not acknowledge it at all. When the backyard transforms into the laboratory, Tasha gives Austin as task to find 3 monsters and invite them to their laboratory. And after Austin departs to go get them, Tasha reveals that her motive is to make Austin a surprise party for his birthday. So she wants the monsters to be their special guests. So then afterwards, we go back to Austin and he's just walking with a very sad tone, thinking that he's going to have one of the worst birthdays ever. And you can actually feel a lot bad for Austin in this case because he's under the impression that Asha forgot about his birthday and is mostly focused on her experiment. But little does he know there's going to be a big surprise for him coming soon. So he arrives at a pyramid which belongs to a mummy. When he goes inside, he begins stepping on X-tiles, which triggers trap that drops boulders onto him, nearly crushing him. He continues to evade them until he makes it out of the trap zone, and when he goes to inspect inside a tomb, he discovers the mummy, who is Tyrone. And he's afraid of him at first, to which he sings, scared of you. But eventually Austin reveals that he's just a lab assistant, so Tyrone's not scared anymore, and he gives Tyrone one of the invitations Tasha instructed him to give, and then Tyrone reads, and it's a invitation to Austin's birthday, but he cannot acknowledge it to Austin himself. So that's when Austin tries to ask what the note says, but Tyrone has to keep it in the dark from him. Then the next location to go to is the werewolf forest, which at some point Tyrone is grabbed by a monster tree that just swings him around until Austin tickles the tree to let Tyrone free. And that's where we meet the werewolf, which is Uniqua, and when she spots them, she's so afraid that she squeals and hides, and I actually really feel for her. But that's where Austin just says, oh brother, which is the running gag he says in this episode. But anyways, he tries to approach Uniqua and she's still afraid and just reprises the song Scared of You when she spots Tyrone. But she eventually calms down and Austin gives her the invitation letter. And she reads it and keeps Austin in the dark of what it says as well. And then now they go to their last stop, which is the vampire's castle. They go up a couple steps until they realize the steps below them are disappearing and turning into a pit. And that's when they have to run. They thankfully make a big jump at the last second. And Uniqua is just dangling on the edge, saying that was just fun and do it again. But Tyrone just brushes it off, saying not to. And now the 3 of them just need to find the vampire, which is Pablo. And once he appears, he scares all of them and transforms into a bat. And everything goes maniacal until they are able to calm down, and Austin gives Pablo the invitation letter. He reads it and keeps Austin in the dark as well, and now they sing a song, Hurry Home, as they are going on their way back to the laboratory. Once they arrive at the laboratory, Austin calls for Tasha, and he reveals that he's gotten all the monsters, but unbeknownst to him, Tasha, hiding behind a secret bookshelf, calls the 3 monsters over to come along, and they disappear with her. Austin finds out the monsters are missing and is disappointed, and then he enters a dark room until the lights turn on, and all the monsters and Tasha yell surprise, wishing happy birthday to Austin, and Austin is so surprised and happy, and Tasha reveals that this was her plan all along. Then they sing a song, Monster Dance Party, and afterwards a stomach rumbles, which scares Tyrone and Pablo, only for Tasha to reveal that it was her and that she's hungry, and that's when they get snacks. This was just a thrilling episode because you were just feeling for Austin along the way, as he felt like his birthday was just not going to be that good until the ending, where he is given a big surprise by everyone. Now to episode 24, Who Done It, which is probably one of my personal favorite episodes of all time. It starts off with Pablo, who is a detective, and he's just searching things with his magnifying glass. And as soon as he introduces himself, he sings the song Aha, and afterwards he finds an invitation next to a tree, and he reads it, and he's in I have. So we start with Uniqua, Tasha, and Austin, and they are space garbage collectors. Whoa. After finding an eaten apple core on the ground and tossing it into the garbage, they sing a song called Garbage Collectors. Whoa. After finding an eaten apple core on the ground and tossing it into the garbage, they sing a song called Intergalactic Garbage Trek. Afterwards, we transition into space where the garbage collectors are in their spaceship. They then sing another song, Trash Day, and they're doing so while collecting garbage from several planets they go to. Then we are met with Pablo and Tyrone, who are in their own ship, and they plan to snatch all of the garbage collectors' trash, because the garbage help fuels the tank for their spaceship. Their first trick was to have Tyrone scream for help from a planet, to which the garbage collectors are able to hear it from their spaceship, so they teleport to check out what's going on, and while doing so, Pablo operates his ship to eat up all the garbage loaded on the collectors' ship. They do find Tyrone, but then he teleports himself back to his ship, to which they figure that this was all a trick. Pablo and Tyrone do sing the garbage funk, which they are celebrating after collecting garbage to fuel their tank. Then there's another instance of them tricking the garbage collectors, where the garbage collectors are planning to collect garbage that is circling around a planet like a ring. But then Tyrone and Pablo call out to them for help, which they're sketched out by this time, but they still try and check it out. Unknowns to them, boys magnetize the nearby moon, to which their ship gets stuck on, and then they have to witness the boys collecting all of their garbage just to fuel their tank. The collectors are able to unstuck themselves, and then they locate a planet that's entirely filled with garbage, and this is where they sing a song, "You Can Do It." While they're collecting their garbage, Pablo and Tyrone arrive in their ship and they spot them, but unknown to them, their ship flies way too close to the black hole to where they are beginning to get sucked in. They try to drive out of it, but their ship has no fuel because they ran out of garbage, so then they are screaming for help. Just as the collectors finish with the garbage planet, they get the distress call from the boys and see that they're not playing this time and they are actually in trouble. And this is where they try to help out, but then their ship gets sucked into the black hole as well. After the collectors get another call from them asking for garbage, that's when Tasha realizes that they need to release the garbage from the back of their ship, so that way the boys' ship will have fuel again so they can help out escape the black hole. They release the garbage and the boys are able to collect them, refilling their tank with fuel, and they're able to escape the black hole. And at first they're leaving the collectors behind, and Tasha is shocked by this, but they do return with a tractor beam to help save the collectors out of the black hole as well, so everyone is saved. They all thank each other, and that's how the episode concludes. I remember liking this episode a lot when I was a kid, but as I'm rewatching it, I'm kind of like more lower on it, as I felt like it was kind of more slow paced. It's still enjoyable nonetheless. Now for episode 44. And then together they sing a song, "We Love Dolphins." And then after that, the backyard transforms into an undersea. And it's also interesting that they're not wearing helmets underwater, but that's besides the point. Anyway, we stick with Pablo and Uniqua, and they're helping by taking care of racing dolphins. And that's where we are met with Tyrone, who's a champ at riding on racing dolphins. And he does act very cocky throughout this episode, which was very upsetting at first, but also at the same time, it was fun because he would eventually face his downfall soon in the episode. Tyrone then begins to sing a song, "Someday," because he wonders whenever the day that comes for someone else to beat him in a dolphin race. Uniqua says one day, if she had a dolphin, she would race him, but Tyrone laughs it off and says he's looking for a real racer, which, oh my god. Tyrone's just pretty much teasing Uniqua at this point. So Uniqua goes searching and comes across a sunken ship. She goes to inspect what's inside and she finds an innocent little dolphin who is afraid of a giant clam. Uniqua is able to use a trick to distract it, so she's able to retrieve the little dolphin and she names him Sea Squirt. Sea Squirt is shown to be a fast dolphin as Uniqua rides him, and she shows him off to Pablo and he's amazed. And then she introduces him to Tyrone and asks him if he can allow Sea Squirt to stay in his stables. But he declines, thinking that Sea Squirt isn't a racing dolphin because he's too small. But then Uniqua challenges Tyrone and a deal is made. If she wins the race, Sea Squirt gets to stay in the stables, but if she loses, she and Sea Squirt have to leave. So we have Uniqua training Sea Squirt, and he does well until he comes across a coral with tiny clams on it, reminding him of the trauma he faced with the big clam. He acts crazy and launches Uniqua onto a nearby coral while attempting to hide from the clams. Afterwards, they calm Sea Squirt down and sing a song called I'll be with you all the way. So then after a couple of practices, Uniqua is ready to compete in the Dolphin race against Tyrone, and the race begins. Tyrone's Dolphin is leading the race most of the time until Uniqua is able to pass by him, putting her in first place. But then she is hindered by the sunken ship because Sea Squirt remembers that there's a giant clam inside and he doesn't want to go in. Tyrone laughs about it and thinks that he's now guaranteed to win as he enters in the sunken ship. But then he's met with the giant clam, to which he is afraid of. Him and his dolphin are cornered by the giant clam until Uniqua and Sea Squirt come to the rescue. At first, Uniqua tries to use her tree trick again, but it fails this time. But thankfully, Sea Squirt is able to overcome his fear and even scares the clam away with his menacing scream. Tyrone thanks them for saving him and his dolphin, and the race continues. On the way to the finish line, they sing a song called The Greatest Dolphin Race. But after such a close race, Uniqua and Sea Squirt are able to be quicker and cross the finish line first, winning the race and beating Tyrone. This was a good downfall for Tyrone, because his cockiness made him believe that he would win the race. But now that he is lost, he's reformed himself and delivered Uniqua an apology. Was greeted by the people who will be her pal. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am the engineer. Which is a cool song, but anyways, the backyard transforms into the train station, and Uniqua is greeted by the people who will be her passengers, Sar Tyrone and Pablo Pavlovich. That's a creative name. Pablo carries a bag filled with a lot of stuff, which makes it heavy. Anyways, Tyrone boards the train and decides to fall asleep, and we see Pablo struggling to lift the bag up, so Nico tries to assist him, but the bag is so heavy to the point where it accidentally backs Pablo into the lever that releases the brakes for the train, and that's when the train starts moving without Uniqua inside to drive it. The train departs the station with Tyrone inside it, and this is where Pablo indirectly becomes a genius when he sits on the handcart. Which also, Uniqua says this quote when he does that, Pablo Pavlovich, you are brilliant. So the two of them use the handcart to catch up with the train. So then the two of them saying, we've gotta catch that train. Another good song as well, but anyways, they make it neck and neck with the train, and Uniqua attempts to reach to the entrance and is almost successful until they enter a tunnel, which Pablo and Uniqua come out on a single track, confused where the train's at, until the train exits from the tunnel behind them and they realize that they're in front of it, so they try to speed up on the handcart, but they're not quick enough, so they have to jump up before the train collides into it. Now the two run to find another way to catch up with the train, and that's when Pablo indirectly finds a sleigh with a horse. So now Uniqua and Pablo ride a sleigh to catch up with the train. Meanwhile with Tyrone, he is sleeping to the point where he actually sleepwalks out of the train and onto its roof. Pablo and Uniqua witness this and they sing a song, Don't Sleepwalk on the Train. Tyrone eventually returns back to his passenger seat to sleep on, and that's when the route goes up a hill, to which at some point the sleigh detaches from the horse and Pablo and Uniqua slide backwards down the hill. So now they have to find another way to catch up with the train. And once again, this is when Pablo indirectly finds something useful to continue their journey, to which this time is a ski lift, and it helps lift him and Uniqua to the top of the hill. And they get a clear inspection on where the train is going, and they see that the track it's on is going to lead to a broken bridge. So they have to rush down the hill to try and change the track to direct the train to the palace. So they use skis to ski down the hill and get ahead of the train so they can reach the railroad switch in time. Pablo and Uniqua struggle pushing the lever a bit, but they are able to succeed at the last minute and switch the tracks just as the train arrives. And this is when Uniqua takes the chance to grip onto the back of the train while carrying Pablo as well. The two get on the roof of the train just as it enters the palace station, and Uniqua makes her way onto the station platform to pull the lever that triggers the brakes to finally stop the train. Tyrone wakes up and sees he's at the station, and he exits the train and tells Uniqua and Pablo that that was the best train ride he's had, unaware of the events that was occurring while he was sleeping. They sing the last song, It Was a Really Good Choo-Choo Ride, and episode 63 concludes. It's another personal favorite of mine just because I had fun watching the Meteor Watch Squad. And if a meteor comes into Earth, Pablo has a new invention called the Rocket Racket, which will be used to swat it away. The three of them then sing a song, Today Could Be the Day. Then they head over to their observatory to begin with some stuff. They go into their lockers to grab some things, and we see Pablo have a teddy bear, which is going to be relevant later on in the episode. We check out Pablo's cool rocket racket before he actually trips on his way down the short staircase and knocks into a shelf, which almost drops a jar of space stuff. But anyways, they continue their meteor watch until they finally see one coming at Earth. Pablo gets so excited that he gets to use his rocket racket to the point where he has a panic attack for the first time in season 4 and the final time he does it as well. But he's too distracted to where he runs into the shelf again, and this time the jar of space stuff actually falls onto him and now he has it all over him. He thinks he's alright until he starts to transform when he hears the word meteor. He turns into what they call him, the Flipper, which is obviously the Backyardigans version of the Hulk. But as the Flipper, he goes crazy trying to search for the meteor, destroying stuff around the observatory. And then they sing a song, Where is Meteor? Before the Flipper slams into the lockers and the teddy bear comes out and he hugs it, and that's when he transforms back into Pablo. And that's when the girls recognize that Pablo turns into the Flipper if he gets excited about the meteor, and he'll turn back to his normal self if he hugs the teddy bear. Then the three of them get in the truck and head outside. It's a bumpy ride, and then Pablo's teddy flies through the truck's sunroof and onto its antenna, which Pablo notices as his teddy is missing and is about to transform into the Flipper, but Uniqua and Tasha try to calm him down while saying, Don't flip out. But Pablo sees the meteor through the sunroof, and that's when he turns into the Flipper again. He jumps out of the car and starts stomping around, getting excited about the meteor. And his stomps are causing the rocks around them to fall, and the girls have to maneuver around the falling rock. And then they stop just before they crash into a rock, but then there are rock pillars falling down like dominoes, and that's when Tasha and Uniqua have to escape their truck just before the final rock pillar falls onto it. To which the teddy bear flies back into Uniqua's arms and she hands it to the Flipper, and he turns back to Pablo. But now their rocket racket is ruined and they can't do anything to stop the meteor. But then that's when Pablo floats the idea of him becoming the Flipper, riding the rocket into space and using the giant racket to swat it away himself. So they go through with that plan, and Pablo turns into the Flipper and is now riding the rocket into space, holding the giant racket in his hands. And he successfully swats the meteor away just as he's falling back into the Earth's atmosphere. The rocket has a parachute, so he's given a safe landing, and he's given his teddy and is turned back to Pablo. They all celebrate as they sing a song, the Meteor's Watchers Celebration. And that's the conclusion. This is another episode I remember because I always liked the element of Pablo becoming a Hulk himself, but in a way that he's excited about a meteor. And it was a cool storyline for the Flipper to be the one that saves the day when it was an unexpected thing to occur. Then we go to episode 74, which is Elephant on the Run, and it starts out with Pablo and Tyrone, who are delivery agents and state that they never miss a packet. They sing the song We Are Delivery Agents before the backyard transforms into a landscape, and they meet Park Ranger Tasha, who tries to quietly show them that they have to deliver an elephant. But they are unaware that they're being spied on. Uniqua, who is Miss Ramaswamy, and partners coming along with it's just that this partner's coming along with him too, which are revealed to be Tyrone and Uniqua. Together they sing a song called Secret Agents, which the rhythm of it is one of the more remarkable aspects of this cool song. But afterwards, they reveal that their mission is to return a loose bone to something in a museum. And we transition into a dark night at the museum to where the trio has many unique gears that could be convenience for them later down the road. Pablo has a spy gadget, Uniqua has a rope, And Tyrone has maple syrup because it could be useful for something in a sticky situation. Pablo uses his spy gadget to open a lock on the wall that unlocks the secret entrance to the museum because they can't go in through the normal way due to some booby traps. And as they walk through the hallway, they sing a song called Sneaking and Hiding. Afterwards, they enter their first room, which is a room full of precious jewels. There's a huge diamond that Uniqua sees, but she accidentally bumps into it, which causes it to fall off its pedestal. But Tyrone thankfully catches it, but then a cage falls onto them. So they assume that if they put the diamond back on its pedestal, the cage will be released. But it was too high for Tyrone to put back, so Pablo uses his spy gadget to put it back in its place, and thankfully it worked out and the cage is lifted back up. Next they try to go to another room and Uniqua tries to go in the normal way, but she triggers another trap that almost traps her in, but thankfully she has the fast reflex to avoid it. Pablo uses his spy gadget to find a secret door into the Egyptian of treasure, and they walk through inside a sarcophagus, and as soon as they get through, the coffin door closes behind them and then they don't have any exit. But it's like, it was the first sarcophagus you went through. It's not hard. While looking for an exit, they sing a song called The Treasures of Ancient Egypt. Afterwards, Unique was able to spot a small window on the wall and she uses her rope to get everyone up there, but after they get into the window door traps them in the room. The door opens, but there's laser beams that appear and then they have to avoid it so they won't trigger anything. Then they sing a song called Laser Limbo Tango, to which they take turns limboing underneath the lasers. Then when Pablo limbos, he unthinkably did it with his gadget on his hand, to which when he makes it through, he loses it and it falls back into the room, and attempting to retrieve it, he accidentally touches the lasers, which causes it to trap the gadget in the room they were in. With that, he no longer has his gadget. Then they come across the final room, which is full of dinosaur skeletons. This is when they figure that the bone must belong to one of the skeletons. They go searching hard until Uniqua trips over a giant dinosaur toe. The trio count each of the dinosaur's toes until Tyrone sees that one is missing a toe. Pablo attempts to put the toe back, but it keeps falling out, so that's when Tyrone's maple syrup comes into handy and he uses it to stick it back on, which works. But then when they go back to exit, another cage pops up. This cage has no ceiling, so Unique was able to use her spy rope to get the trio out of the cage and out of the museum at the same time. Mission is done and the episode concludes. This is a more remarkable episode because it's one of those episodes that introduce the classic three that you would see most episodes in Backyardigans: Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone. Next is episode 6. Be a surfer. He explains that he wants to surf at a beach called Tiki Beach because it has the best waves there, and he has a tiki charm on his neck. He then sings a song called Surf's Up Ho Daddy, which has a cool reprise at the end of the episode. But unbeknownst to Pablo, Austin knows where Tiki Beach is because he's the life guardian of it. Will only allow experienced surfers to surf there. He needs Pablo to prove him that he has got rad moves in order to surf there. Then the backyard transforms into a beach, and this is when Pablo finds Austin, who's the mysterious lifeguard, and asks him where Tiki Beach is. Austin asks to see Pablo's rad moves, but most of the moves Pablo shows aren't rad enough. So then Austin points him to a direction and expects him to find palm trees over there. So Pablo goes for it. But unbeknownst to him, Austin tricked him because he knows that Pablo needs more moves than that in order to surf Tiki Beach. On his way, Pablo sings a song called Cruising the Doom. Then afterwards, he comes across the palm tree beach and meets Tyrone. He asks Tyrone if he's in Tiki Beach, but unfortunately, Tyrone reveals that he's in Palm Tree Beach. Pablo's disappointed, but Tyrone reveals that he's a surfer as well, so they sing a song called Rad Moves, which is fun. But afterward, Tyrone points out the Tiki charm on Pablo's neck, and then after that, they discover the mystery lifeguard again, Austin, and they ask him where Tiki Beach is. Austin asks to see the rad moves, and they show some of their rad moves, but it's still not rad enough, so Austin tricks them into going to a beach that is pink sand. They are iffy about it, but they still go ahead and search for it anyways. And after they leave, Austin sings a song called Mystery Lifeguard, which is basically him bragging about how mysterious he is. But afterwards, Pablo and Tyrone come across a beach with pink sand, and this is where they meet up with Uniqua, and she reveals that they're at Pink Sand Beach, not Tiki Beach. But she reveals she's a surfer too and shows her rad moves. After that, she puts her surfboard in Pablo's car and then points out his tiki charm on his neck. Then they spot Austin in the car once again and ask him where Tiki Beach is. And he just tries to trick them again, but this time Pablo realizes it's the same lifeguard, and so he follows him in his car, and it has a fun chase sequence to the point where they lose Austin, but they did not realize that they had already arrived at Tiki Beach. And Pablo does not realize this until his tiki charm is pulled and is pulled towards a giant tiki, which reveals that they're at Tiki Beach. After having excitement, Austin reveals himself to be the mystery lifeguard and explains his motives was just so they could get better rad moves in order to surf at this amazing beach. So then the four of them surf at Tiki Beach while reprising the song Surf's Up Ho Daddy, which they show off all their rad moves and they're all cool. After that, they don't get a snack and the episode ends. This episode was decent. It mostly focused on Pablo trying to find his way to Tiki Beach, not knowing that he needed the proper rad moves in order to surf on that beach. Then we get to episode 60. We are introduced to the Luau brothers, which is Austin, Pablo, and Tyrone. And they all have their own traits, well, except for Austin. For Tyrone, he's Tyrone the Strong. Pablo is Pablo the Swift. But Austin, he doesn't really have any characteristics for his strengths, so he just decides to go by just Austin. And then they sing the song, We Love a Luau. Afterwards, they transform the backyard into Hawaii, where they are going to have their luau party. All of a sudden, the ground starts to shake, and they notice it's coming from the volcano, and that's when the brothers realize that it has to do with the Volcano sisters, and the Volcano sisters are shouting that they are mad, and so the brothers go up to the volcano to check out what's going on. So they enter the volcano and introduces themselves as the Luau brothers, and the sisters, who is Tasha and Uniqua, express that they're mad. They warn the brothers that if they don't get what they want, they're gonna press a red button that triggers the volcano to erupt. And then the song plays, We'll Get You What You Want, which is a really fun song because it's so dramatic. And then the brothers try to appease the sisters. The sisters don't tell the brothers what they want, so they are left to figure it out themselves. Then the sisters blow the brothers out of the volcano and they land right back onto the beach, which is the only scene I could ever remember when I watched this as a kid. The brothers are thinking what the sisters want, and Austin thinks he's figured it out, but Tyrone and Pablo continue to just ignore him, and then they go for their ideas. First with Tyrone, he thinks they want a big tiki mask, so he begins to climb up the tallest mountain in Hawaii to grab the largest tiki mask, and because of his strength being Tyrone the Strong, he's able to carry the giant tiki mask so easily. The brothers return to the Volcano sisters, and when Tyrone presents his gift, the heavy tiki mask, the sisters pull a lever that ejects the tiki mask back to where it came from. Well, the sisters blow the brothers away again, and then now they have to figure out what's the next gift they have to give them. Austin still tries to tell Tyrone and Pablo that he has figured it out, but they don't listen to him, and Pablo goes his idea, which is a shiny pearl that's located in the water. But the shiny pearl is guarded by a giant clam, but Pablo is Pablo the Swift, so he uses his strength of speed to swim away from the clam very fast. After he retrieves the shiny pearl, he presents it to the Volcano sisters, but once again, they pull a lever to eject the shiny pearl back to where it came from and blow the brothers right back out onto the beach. And this is when the brothers and the sisters sing a song called Hukapele, which is a very dramatic song equally to We'll Get You What You Want. But afterwards, Pablo and Tyrone are starting to give up until Austin loses his cool and tells them that he has known the whole time what they've wanted. And this is where he picks up flowers and explains that he wants to give the sisters flowers. Pablo and Tyrone are not really sold with, but Austin wants to make the attempt. So they approach the Volcano sisters once again, and Austin presents some flowers and explains that he wants them to wear them at their luau, meaning he wants to invite the Volcano sisters to their luau. And he passes the flowers to the sister, and they give 1 minute to analyze what happened and then say mahalo, which means thank you. Pablo and Tyrone realize that Austin was right and that the sisters just wanted to go to the brothers' luau. So then they come down and they join them on their luau party. The brothers thank Austin for saving the luau because he was able to figure out what the sisters want. And this is where we get this really heartwarming moment where they redub Austin's name from just Austin to Austin the Smart. Austin likes that nickname, and then they sing the song We're Glad, which is about the sisters being glad that they got what they want, and the brothers summarizing what they went through in order to get what the sisters wanted. So in my opinion with this episode, I love it. It's really incredible, and it's just a suspenseful story of the Lua brothers trying to find out what the sisters want before they could press the button and erupt the volcano. Now, let's Austin. There are clowns looking for a circus to perform in, and this is when they sing a song, Best Clowns in Town. Afterward, they transition into a train station where they're trying to look for a circus tent, but it's nowhere to be seen. And that's when they see a ringmaster announcing that his circus is going to take place in Big City, and he's going to board his train until the clowns come by and introduce themselves. And the ringmaster introduces himself as Ringmaster Tyrone. The clowns ask if he can allow them to be in his circus, but he declines because he does not like clowns. So what is your circus all about, huh? Anyways, the clowns try to do various things to make Tyrone laugh, but then he sings the song, That's Not Funny, which is fun. But then the train leaves without Tyrone, and this is where we get one of the most famous gags that can take place in a single episode. It is of Tyrone screaming, Clowns! And then screams zooming out every time an echo is heard. But the clowns reassure him that they'll make sure he gets to his circus, and they use a tiny car to drive to the next station. We get this little fun sequence of them driving in their car and chasing the train, and at some point, the clowns drive the car into a barn, bounces out laughing, but Tyrone is not, and he's just infuriated. They then come across a canyon where they see the train station on the other side of it. Tyrone doubts that they could even make it, but then the clowns have the idea of making a tightrope to cross over the canyon, and they carry Tyrone onto their unicycle and start crossing it. Tyrone is so scared while the clowns are just having fun, and to the point where they decide to do a little bit of tricks on the middle of the tightrope, spinning around and then riding it backwards. They do make it across, and Tyrone is still not laughing, but the train is at the next train station, so Tyrone is about to board it until the clowns stop him to give him one last hug. But then he misses his train once again. And then afterwards, he starts to just give up and says he doesn't want to do the circus anymore. But the clowns are encouraging him to not give up, and then they sing a song, The Show Must Go On. Then the four of them spot Big City, and that's where the clowns have the idea to use a cannon to get there. Tyrone is fearful, but the clowns grab him and toss him in, and so do they go into the canyon, and this is when the cannon launches the four of them into the air. And midway falling, the clowns use umbrellas to have a good landing, but Tyrone did not have an umbrella and is still falling to the ground, but thankfully Uniqua is able to catch up to him and save him. And then the clowns have a fun time bouncing Tyrone around on their umbrellas until they land on the ground safely in front of the big city, and at first Tyrone is dazed, but then he starts to laugh and decides to let the clowns form in his circus. The circus show takes place, and then they sing a song, At the Circus. And after the show ends, they have a brief intermission to go have some snacks. This was a hilarious episode because it's clowns, and also it's home to one of the more famous gags that took place in the Backyardigans of Tyrone just screaming clowns. 36th episode, Save the Day, and we have Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone. Which is called What's Bugging You, and we start off with Tyrone and Uniqua, and they claim to be the best pest controllers on Earth. They are able to encourage a giant fly that's flying in our screens to fly away, because they don't want to harm the pests as well, showcasing the kind-hearted nature pest control has. Then they sing a song called What's Bugging You, which is fun. Then they are assigned to deal with a pest problem at Lady Tasha's house. So the backyard transforms into Lady Tasha's house, and she invites the pest control in. She wants them to get rid of a worm that's in her house before Mr. Spiffy comes by because she wants to join the Spiffy Club. And her house needs to be the neatest and spiffiest so she can be part of the club. Then the pest control try to go deal with the worm, but the worm crawls over to Tasha, and we get this amusing scene of her just screaming and knocking into her clock that almost tips over, but thankfully Tyrone is able to catch it on time. Mr. Spiffy arrives at Tasha's house, so pest control has to hide away from him so they wouldn't be noticed while he's inspecting Tasha's house. Tasha opens the door for Mr. Spiffy, who is Pablo. This is an interesting role for Pablo because he's normally energetic and happy, but this time he's very serious and straight-faced. Pablo and Tasha then sing a song, My Name is Spiffy, and I like it as well. So back with the pest control, they struggle to get that single worm out, so they think of making a snack to lure the worm out of the house. This is where they thought of making cupcakes, which they are microwaved too. That's interesting. But they do make a mess while making them, and that's when Pablo and Tasha come into the kitchen, but Pablo is unaware of the mess. So Tasha quickly uses a bowl to cover his eyes and lead him out of the kitchen. So pest control attempts to lure the single worm out with cupcakes, but then all of a sudden more worms pop by through the back door, and now there's a herd of worms. And then they cause more trouble as they head up the stairs and into Lady Tasha's room, and the pest controls has to deal with them in there. Nico and Tyrone spot vases and decide to use them as a way to catch the worms, and that's where we get this song, Get Those Little Critters. They manage to collect all but one worm into the vase, and that's when they have to pretend to be statues while Mr. Spiffy inspects Tasha's room, and that's when a single worm jumps on his head. And then he asks Tasha if there's something on his head, and Tasha quickly takes his hat off and tosses the worm away, and makes it look like Pablo was referring to his hat, and then they continue on to the next room. But then once pest control open the front door, more worms come in the house, and then they cause havoc in the living room. And sadly, that's how Mr. Spiffy discovers that there's pests in the house. And Tasha is devastated but understands that her house was not as neat and spiffy. Then we have pest control think of an idea of joining in with the worms party and singing a song, The Worm Party, to which they are in a conga line, and that's how the worms end up exiting the house. Also making Mr. Spiffy have a little bit of fun as well. And because of that, he allows Tasha to join the Spiffy Club, and she is stoked. So with this episode, I think it's fine. Like I mentioned, it was interesting to see a serious Pablo in this episode. It's kind of out of character of him to be this kind of figure. Now we go for the next episode. Ranch hounds from outer space, and we start off with Tasha, who is a rancher, and she's having a busy day doing work at her ranch. So she sings the song I Gotta Get to Work, and then the backyard transforms into her ranch, and she explains that her job for the day is to build a new fence, clean out the farm, and paint her house. And that's when we see a UFO crash onto the earth. And it opens up to reveal us that is Pablo and Uniqua, who come from the planet Zorbador. So when they check their field for their UFO, they realize that it's run out of Zamzam, and that's where they're like, we must find Zamzam. And then they see Tasha's ranch and decide to ask her for help. We see Tasha come out with a plate of pancakes, blueberry flavored, and that's when Pablo and Uniqua introduce themselves saying Zoid Zoid. They see the pancakes, which resemble Zamzam, so they want to get it, but Tasha instructs them that they must do the ranch work first before they can get it. And because they are nice aliens, they're willing to do anything they can to earn the pancakes. And then they all sing a song, Will Work for Pancakes. So she guides them to their first job, which is to build a new fence. And she says she wants it tall so the horses don't run out. She leaves to get more plank wood. Then the aliens decide to use their powers to make the tall fence. And they make it tall enough to reach into the sky. Then Tasha comes back with more plank woods and discovers what they did. She is stunned and explains them that that's not what she meant by a tall fence, so she corrects them and says she wants the fence built around the yard. So they use their powers and fix it just like that. And Tasha's impressed, so she guides them to their next task, which is to clean out the barn. She wants them to move the horses out of the way so she can clean out the stalls. But the horses are too big, and then the aliens decide to shrink all of them and put them in a bucket. and then they sing a song, Zoid Zoid. Afterwards, Tasha comes back and asks them to return the horses to the stalls, but they're nowhere to be seen. Try to show her that they're shrunken in a bucket, but she doesn't use her eyes to look into it. So she starts to feel depressed that she just lost all her horses, but then the aliens decide to resize them, and then she sees them and is happy again. So Tasha gives them one last chore, which is to paint her house orange. She leaves to go get the painting supplies, but the aliens decide to use their powers to change the house into an orange, but they change it into the fruit orange, not the color. Tasha discovers it and is in shock, and then they sing a song, Oh My, which is a fun one. Throughout the song, the aliens change the house to different kinds of fruits until they go back to the orange. That's when Tasha has to correct them that she wants it to be the color, not the fruit. So the aliens use their powers to change it into an orange painted house, and Tasha is amazed. That's when she goes in to get some butter and syrup for the pancakes, but Pablo and Uniqua just take the pancakes and run back to the ship where they're able to use them to fill up their fuel tank, and their UFO starts up again. Tasha spies them behind a rock after she sees where they were going, and that's when she realizes that they are from outer space. And that's how the episode ends. This is another memorable episode, and I liked it. And it was pretty interesting considering this is the first episode that Tyrone would be absent in. So I wouldn't get those usual, that was a great X adventure line from him. Now let's get to another one of my personal favorites. Episode 65, Dragon Express, and it surprisingly starts off with Pablo, who is a dragon jock, and he does some fancy flying with his dragon. It's his first day on his new job as a Dragon Express delivery. He then sings Dragon Express. Then afterwards, he heads over to his new job, which the terminal is located on a mountain, and that's when he flies over to greet his workers, who is Austin and Uniqua. He introduces himself and his orange dragon, whose name is Maverick. Uniqua introduces herself as the boss of the terminal, and Austin is another jock as well, who introduces his green dragon, and her name is Windy. They are all impressed by Pablo's amazing flying, and that's when Uniqua instructs them to deliver their first package of the day, which is to a clifftop castle. So both fly on their dragons to deliver the packages, and we see Pablo do some tricks while Austin is going straight forward. And there's a shortcut that Pablo takes because he's able to use his fancy flying to get through it, while Austin goes the long way because he's not used to doing tricks, so he just goes the regular route. Pablo delivers his package first and asks Austin to give his as well because he can just do it for him. Austin returns back to the terminal and tells Uniqua how Pablo was able to deliver both packages, which impresses her. After that, Pablo returns and they all sing the song Fancy Flying. Then the jocks are instructed to make another delivery. This time they have to fly through a hidden mine. On their way, Pablo teaches Austin some flying tricks in which he attempts to do and is somewhat successful. Then they both enter the mine and sing the song Dragon Jock just as they deliver the packages. They return to the terminal, and that's where Uniqua has one package for them to deliver, and that's to the Ice Palace, which she claims is very tricky. But Pablo opts to do it, which saddens Austin, and so Pablo rides Maverick to make his way to the Ice Palace, and things seem to go fine until they reach the main room. He sees a mailbox and runs over to it, but then he and Maverick bump into it and realize it's just a mirror. Then Maverick spots the mailbox on the other side, and Pablo wonders how it got over there, so they go over there and bump into it, and it turns out that is a mirror as well. And because of the confusion with all the reflections, that's when Pablo instructs Maverick to make smoke to alert the others for help. Uniqua and Austin see it, and that's where Austin gets on Windy and fly over there to help Pablo. As he enters the Ice Palace, it begins to crumble down, and that's when he has to utilize the tricks that Pablo has taught him to maneuver around the falling ice. He makes it into the room with Pablo, and that's when they help each other find the right mailbox. That's when Austin comes up with a great idea to use their dragons to melt the mirror with their fire to see if the mailbox is there. So they do that until they come across the real mail, and that's where they deliver the package and depart the crumbling Ice Palace. They return back to the terminal, and that's when they sing a song, Woohoo, and that's the ending. This one's another personal favorite because I was entertained by Pablo's fancy flying and him teaching Austin how to do it as well, so he can be on his level of dragon riding. Now let's get to episode 66, Flower Power, and it starts out with Uniqua, and she's a friendly flower seller because 75th episode, The Magic Skateboard, and it starts off with Tyrone, who's trying to ride a skateboard but he struggles. He's trying to do tricks on a skateboard because he's going to be facing off in a skateboarding competition. He then sings the song The Show Off Showdown before he heads over to the skate park, which is called Skatesburg. And he's met with his competitors, Uniqua, Pablo, and Austin. And they're all together facing off to win the Golden Ollie. Tyrone tries to do some tricks in front of them, but he falls off his skateboard and Pablo and Austin just mock him. Pablo does mention about the Magic Skateboard, and that interests Tyrone. But Uniqua says it's just not real, it's a myth. So as Uniqua helps Tyrone have some skateboard skills, they sing a song, Get a Little Better. Then we have Uniqua acknowledge one thing. The board doesn't make the skater makes the board. And then she departs to practice just as Tyrone tries to practice on his board, but he accidentally kicks it down a hill and breaks into pieces as it lands on a rock. Then all of a sudden, a rock door opens and there's light illuminating from the cave. So Tyrone checks it out and he discovers the Magic Skateboard. And he goes to practice with it and he's developed a lot of skills. To which one of them was him rolling up the vertical side of a rock wall, clearly confirming to him that it is the Magic Skateboard. He's so ecstatic that he sings the song, I found the Magic Skateboard, as he's now confident that he's guaranteed to win with it. So he meets back with Austin, Uniqua, and Pablo, and the show-off showdown begins. So they skate through the first part, which is the grinding rail. The Magic Skateboard helps Tyrone stay balanced on it, while for Austin, he gets too distracted that he falls off and is eliminated from the competition. The other three make it through the first part, and now they get prepared for the second part of the competition, which is called the Maximum Pipe Challenge. The Magic Skateboard helps Tyrone once again keep himself skilled in the competition, while Uniqua fails to skate around the pipe and falls off too, so now she's eliminated. And now the competition comes down to Pablo and Tyrone, and they are preparing themselves for the third part of the competition, the Extra Extreme Ramp Run. Before they start, they sing a song, May the Best Dude Win. Just then, when Tyrone tries to pick up the Magic Skateboard using his foot to step on it, he doesn't catch it on time and it falls down the ramp and it rolls away off course. Which many people acknowledge this part, and I will too. I don't know why Tyrone doesn't just go down and just grab it back. It's just off course. It's not broken. He can just retrieve it. He's in complete despair, but Uniqua suggests he uses her board. But Tyrone explains to her that that was the Magic Skateboard. But Uniqua reminds him about the quote she told him. The board doesn't make the skater makes the board. So Tyrone uses Uniqua's skateboard to continue the competition. So Tyrone and Pablo face up at the final part. Then when Pablo tries to go for the final ramp, he falls down, eliminating him from the competition, leaving Tyrone left to try and win the competition. He repeats Uniqua's quote as he goes off the big ramp, and he's successful and is able to skateboard to the finish line, winning the show-off showdown. Everyone applauds for him and hands him over the Golden Ollie, but that's when Tyrone admits that he cheated using the Magic Skateboard they mentioned earlier. But despite that though, they still acknowledge that Tyrone used his own skills on the last part when he used Uniqua's skateboard, so that was merit for his win. And that's the range, which has a good flow to the rhythm. He then picks up a jump rope that is located next to the sandbox, which becomes an integral plot point for the story of the episode. After Tyrone leaves, Tasha, Pablo, and Uniqua come out to play jump rope, but Uniqua's jump rope is nowhere to be found, and this is where she figures that it might be a bandit that took it. So the backyard transforms into a Wild West, and the trio of Pablo, Uniqua, and Tasha are on horses. While on their journey, they reprise the song, their version of Riding the Range, which is still good as always. Then they enter a canyon, and this is where a top tier song comes and plays. There's an echo in this canyon. It's just iconic with the characters rapping some of the lyrics, and then with the pure melody to it, and on top of the tune of this song. Afterwards, the trio end up at a dead end of the canyon, but thankfully Tyrone, who's on top of it, meets up with them. He helps by using apples to entice the trio's horses to run up the canyon wall. Afterwards, Tyrone goes his separate ways and crosses over a stream with his horse. Then the trio follows along and they cross over, but when it comes to Pablo's, his horse launches him over onto the stream and runs away. But thankfully, before Pablo can panic more, Tyrone's able to return his horse. So the sun sets and the four of them settle themselves in sleeping bags overnight with a campfire. The next morning, Tyrone wakes up first and he leaves to go to Texas, and he sings a song called Texas Here I Come. But as he's singing, some apples that was in his bag is falling out, which causes Uniqua, Pablo, and Tasha's horses to follow him. When the trio wakes up, they discover that their horses and Tyrone are missing, so they assume the bandit must have gotten them. But they're able to spot a handcart on a railroad, so they use it to catch up with the supposed bandit. Sun sets once again, and Tyrone comes across a cabin that he decides to nap in. Then the trio arrive in their handcart, find their horses at the cabin, but they assume that the bandit must have gotten Tyrone inside it. As they get to the front door of the cabin, they start demanding for the bandit to surrender. Just as Tyrone wakes up and hears the commotion, he sneaks out of the back to meet up with the trio at the front. Four of them enter the cabin and try to find the bandit, but they see the back doors open and assume that the bandit escaped. Without any question, Tyrone thanks the trio for saving him. And then the four of them sing a song called Buffalo Girls and Boys. This is the most remarkable song from me in this episode. At the end of the song, Tyrone uses Unique's Now let's get to episode 17, which is Race Around the World, and finally for the first time, Austin is our introduction character. And he's preparing for a race because he's never won a race before. He then sings a song called Racing Day, which I always enjoy. Afterwards, he's joined by Tasha, who's going to be the referee, and she asks what's on his waist, and he reveals that it's his racing pack because he wants to come into the race prepared, which this thing actually comes into use later on in the episode. But then the backyard transforms into the starting line, which is in a forest. Austin is introduced to his racing competitors, starting off with Pablo, who has won a race for running. For Tyrone, he's won a race for snowboarding, and Uniqua, she's won a race for kayaking. So then the race begins, which starts off with the running phase, which is convenience for Pablo because he's already won a medal for this phase of the race. Then they sing one of my favorite songs, Go Go Go, which is a fun motivator for people on a race. During the running phase, there are hurdles. Everyone successfully gets through it, but Uniqua injures her knee. But thanks to Austin preparing himself, he gives her a bandage and she feels much better. Then we get to the second phase of the race, which is snowboarding. And this is convenience for Tyrone because he's won medal for this phase of the race. And despite Pablo being ahead, Tyrone and then later on Uniqua are able to leapfrog him, putting him in third place. And during so, everyone sings the song Snow is Cold But I Am Cool. Afterwards, Pablo accidentally snowboards right off a cliff and dangles on the edge holding onto a sign. This is when Austin becomes helpful again and he spots Pablo being in trouble, so he helps Pablo by getting him a rope to climb back up. Next, after that, we get to the kayaking phase of the race, which is convenient for Uniqua because she's won a medal for this kind of race. And despite Tyrone being in the current lead, Uniqua and then Pablo are able to paddle ahead of him, putting him in third. But then disaster happens to Tyrone and he loses his paddle. But thanks to Austin using a hook that he prepared himself, he's able to retrieve Tyrone's paddle and return it to him. And then we get to the last phase of the race, which is the desert. After being in dead last most of the race, Austin sings a song called Austin's Lament, which you can actually feel so bad for him because he hasn't won a race and is just left in the back of the pack most of the times. Afterwards, he sees his fellow racers just sitting next to a cactus because they're so dehydrated from the hot desert conditions. But because Austin was prepared with water, he's able to share his drink with his fellow competitors to hydrate them again. Finally, all four of them finish the desert phase and are back in the forest where they dash towards the finish line. All four of them try to cross the tape together, but it pushes them back because it's very strong. They make a second attempt, but it's all for naught. This is when Austin's preparation comes into big convenience in this part. He grabs a pair of scissors and cuts the tape, and has now been declared the winner of the race. Everyone applauds him for his victory, and Tasha puts the medal around his neck. That's the conclusion for this amazing episode. This was such a thrilling episode, all because it was centered around Austin, who was a character that was really underutilized in most season 1 episodes. So it was nice to allow us viewers to get to know Austin more in this episode. Now, next up, we get to episode 18, which is called Monster Detectives. And it first starts off with Pablo, who's a soccer monster. He explains to us that soccer monsters love to just play soccer, and he sings the song people around a swamp. They sing totally awesome swamp adventure, and then afterwards, the backyard transforms into a swamp, and that's where tourists, Tasha and Austin, come by. They ask them if they are interested on their tour, but they're not because they want to see something more awesome and unusual. So this is when Pablo and Uniqua decide to make up a lie to entice them by saying that there is a swamp creature. Tasha and Austin believe their lie and they get on their tour boat and the adventure begins. Just as the boat leaves the dock, we see the real swamp creature emerge from the water, who is Tyrone, obviously. Austin and Uniqua want to know more about the swamp creature, and Pablo and Uniqua make up lies about the physical description of the swamp creature to then where they sing a song called He's Green. This is when Pablo and Uniqua come up with a plan to trick Austin and Tasha that there is a swamp creature, so they have Pablo snorkel underwater to make it more believable. They were successful at first until Tasha pulls Pablo's snorkel out, which reveals to be him, and that's when she questions what's going on. But Uniqua and Pablo try to encourage them that a swamp creature will come soon, so they just continue the journey. You can see how annoyed Tasha and Austin are because they just want to see a swamp creature, but Uniqua and Pablo continue to just waste time to just prolong their tour more, which isn't interesting them. But then we get a song from them called This Customer Is Always Right. So Uniqua and Pablo make another plan to trick Tasha and Austin. So they have Pablo sit in the tree to shake it so that way it looks like a swamp creature's in there. But as soon as Pablo's in the tree, a bunch of Canciums come and tickle him. That's when he falls out of the tree and then a swarm of Canciums tickle everyone on the boat. This is when Tasha has had enough and decides to take over the steering of the tour boat, but Uniqua sees this and tries to take over. Then Austin and Pablo grab onto the steering wheel as well, and then the boat is steered into a rock and crashes. And then now the four of them have to walk through the swamp to get to land. The tour guide's trying to make it seem like it's awesome to walk through the muddy swamp, but Awesome comes in with a funny witty one-liner being like, well, it is awesomely bad. And then they sing a song, An Awesomely Bad Time. Night falls and the four of them build a campfire. Tasha wants to go back home, but Uniqua and Pablo try to beg her not to, and this is where they come up with one final trick, is to make Pablo be the swamp creature. So Pablo goes off to dress up like a swamp creature, which he doesn't do a good job at, but then the real swamp creature, Tyrone, comes in and joins everyone. Tasha and Austin are super stoked to see an actual swamp creature, but Unicorn is unaware that that's not Pablo. So when Pablo actually comes out poorly dressed as a swamp creature, that's when Unicorn realizes that the real swamp creature has appeared, and both her and Pablo freak out and panic. This is when Tasha and Austin realize that the tour guides did not know that there were actually going to be a swamp creature. But despite that though, they admit they had a really awesome time with this adventure. And then the episode ends. For me, this was a pretty awesome episode, but I'm always contemplating on did I ever see this episode on my television screen before when I was a kid, because I don't remember any of the scenes that occurred throughout this episode. But besides that, this episode was really fun and it was enjoyable to see Flo and Uniqua try and manipulate Tasha and Austin to believing that a swamp creature actually exists, unknown that it is actually reality and Tyrone is the swamp creature. But now coming from episode Episode 37, Into the Deep, and it starts off with Pablo and Tyrone, and their plan is to explore under the sea. They sing Into the Deep, and then afterwards, the backyard transforms into the underwater sea, and we have Pablo and Tyrone in a submarine. Then we cut to a scene of a mermaid garden who is owned by Tasha and Uniqua, and they are the mermaids. And they don't want any intruders in their garden, as there was one yellow fish that tried to intrude them, but they were able to blow it away. They then hear and spot a submarine approaching, and then that's when they assume that it's going to intrude their garden. So they make noises to distract the submarine to go the other way. And then they sing one of the most harmonic songs, The Call of the Mermaid. And I love how they sing it with the mermaids being like, it's the call. And then the boys singing it as well, which adds on top of that. Then the mermaids decide to move the submarine and push it onto a geyser, which shoots the submarine out and causes it to land onto the seafloor. Then we have Tyrone and Pablo scuba diving to check out what's going on. Meanwhile, we have the mermaids sing Our Garden. But then Tyrone and Pablo are approaching the garden and they say that they want to capture it on film. And the mermaids heard it and thought they meant they were going to capture them. So they try to swim away, but Pablo and Tyrone follow them into a cave. And while they all roam around the dark cave, they sing a song called You Gotta Be Brave. And then the mermaids are cornered while Pablo and Tyrone approach them. The mermaids try to blow the scuba divers away, but then because of their noise, they cause an avalanche above them to start occurring that's going to land on Pablo and Tyrone, and they're unaware of it. But the mermaids save them just before it crushes them, and they make it out, and they find out that they're in the mermaid garden. The mermaids yelled for the scuba divers to leave until they reveal that they want to capture the mermaids on film. And so the mermaids allow them to, and the misunderstanding is cleared up. This was a pretty captivating episode because it took place underwater, and I always loved seeing the dynamic of Uniqua and Tasha, and them being mermaids was definitely something fun to watch. Episode 38, Newsflash, and we start off with for episode 47, To the Center of the Earth, which for some reason I always thought this was a season 1 episode. But anyways, we open up with Tyrone searching for his lucky penny in his sandbox because he assumes he lost it in there. And that's where we see Uniqua and Pablo playing around in a wagon, and he asks them for help. And they agree to it, and then they sing a song, Amazing Inventors, because Pablo and Uniqua are inventors. And then that's when they go to their building and present Tyrone an image of the center of the earth. Then they present him the rocket drill that digs deep underground. They also bring a box filled with important stuff because they feel like they need some extra inventions to bring on their trip. This is when the rocket drill drills into the earth, and that's when they sing Going to the Center of the Earth, which is the song I remember. And then finally, the rocket drill reaches the first area underground, and it is bouncy. They get off the ship to go find Tyrone's lucky penny, and that's when he spots it. He's about to go grab it until Pablo and Uniqua stop him, asking him how are they gonna get it. Tyrone is confused and answers that he could just walk over and get the penny, but then Pablo and Uniqua disagree and say that they need to use inventions to retrieve it, claiming that it could be dangerous if Tyrone just walks over naturally and just retrieve his penny. I know it's kind of frustrating, but at the same time, I can understand their point of view because you're in an obscure place and you don't know what could happen any minute. So I get where they're coming from and they want to approach it more safely, but at the same time, the way they execute using their inventions was definitely sloppy. Anyways, the inventors try to use a grabblecopter to try and get the penny, but they struggle a bit, and then that's when the penny is dropped into a chasm. So Tyrone and the inventors have to use the rocket drill again to dig even deeper. They arrive at their second area of the earth, which is made of diamonds, and they are slippery. They see the penny is on top of a diamond pole, and the inventors decide to use an invention called the vacuum shoes, in which Pablo wears them and walks up a wall and tries to retrieve the penny, but then all of a sudden the diamond pole it's on tips over and falls, and everyone is slipping on the diamond. And when we get this song, The Diamond Slide, which I enjoy as well, they struggle to grab it, and then the penny falls through a hole, and that's where we get a funny line from Uniqua saying, maybe that's not a lucky penny after all. Everyone goes back into the rocket drill and drills even deeper into the earth. They arrive at what the inventors believe is the center of the earth, which is like an underground island. They spot the penny, but it's unexpectedly located next to a dinosaur. And that's when Tyrone needs them to use an invention to retrieve it. But it turns out they don't have an invention made for that situation. So they say if you don't have one, you make it. And then they sing the extendo arm as they are making their invention. They try out their new invention and are able to grab the penny, but then when the dinosaur notices, he accidentally knocks the penny out and it flies into the air, and he sees Uniqua, Pablo, and Tyrone and chases after them, and they are forced to flee, and they are about to reach the rock control, but then it sinks, and they're now left with the dinosaur running towards them. But then Tyrone's able to catch his lucky penny that flew in the air, and he uses it to play fetch with the dinosaur. And he returns it to Tyrone, showing that he's just a kind dinosaur. So Tyrone has his lucky penny back, and that's how the episode concludes. This was a pretty interesting episode because there was a lot of suspense with, oh, are they going to be able to retrieve Tyrone's penny? But then they continue to make mishaps that causes it to drop even deeper into the earth. Time for episode newspaper, which is one I like as well. He then tells us that he has a brand new route to go on. So he heads off on his bike, and that's when the backyard transforms into his new route, which he is unaware of what it is at first. He delivers newspapers to a few strange houses until his tire on his bike pops. Then all of a sudden, a wolf comes jumping out of the bush and introduces himself as Austin the Wolf. And Tyrone's frightened by him. And he welcomes him in Fairytale Village. And then they sing a song, You're in Fairytale Village. Afterwards, Austin tries to huff and puff, but Tyrone gets scared that he is the big bad wolf and flees. And just as he leaves, he tosses Austin a newspaper before Austin reveals to the viewers that he wants to blow up Tyrone's bike tire. Then Tyrone comes across a house made of gingerbread and candy, and he goes to check it out only to discover that it's owned by a witch who is Uniqua. And then she asks Tyrone if she wants to have him for lunch, but he misinterprets it as she wants to eat him, so he runs away and hides behind a giant lollipop. Then they sing a song, Gotta Dash. Afterwards, Tyrone decides to flee, and just as he's leaving, he tosses Uniqua a newspaper as well, and this is when Uniqua follows him along with Austin the Wolf. And so the two of them chase Tyrone on a magic broomstick to where Tyrone comes across a giant beanstalk and climbs up. He reaches the clouds and is tired, so he tries to rest. So he goes to sit on what he thought was a rock, but it turns out it's the foot of the giant, who is Pablo. And this scene was definitely a callback to a giant problem to when Tyrone sat on Tasha's foot when he thought it was a rock. So it's funny how it happened to him again in this episode. He runs away and Pablo assumes he's playing hide and seek. So Tyrone is scared and he just hides, but when Pablo goes to find him, he spots his antlers and says hi to him, and Tyrone just says he found me and then screams as he runs away. And then he starts bouncing on the clouds, to which the giant joins in, and that's where Tyrone has to just climb back down the beanstalk. But before it does, he tosses Pablo a newspaper, and as he climbs down the beanstalk, Pablo follows him as well, and the beanstalk starts to shake, and that causes Tyrone to fall onto a swinging leaf where he screams just as he's met with the witch and wolf again. He flies off the beanstalk back onto the ground and is fleeing the village on foot. Everyone begs him to stop, saying that they want to have him for lunch, to which he still misinterprets it as they want to eat him. So then we get this song, Why Does Everyone Want to Eat Me? He then makes it to a dead end of a rock fence, but it isn't too high, so I don't know why he didn't try to climb over. But he is surrounded by the wolf, witch, and giant. And that's when the wolf blows up his tire to reveal that he wasn't a bad wolf after all. And that's when everyone clears up that they want to have him over for breakfast, lunch, and snack. And that clears up the misunderstanding that Tyrone had. And the episode ends. Another memorable episode, very fun, very thrilling, and I was entertained by everything of it. 58th episode, Pirate Camp, and we start with combating each other. Uses her pollen power, which causes Austin to sneeze and Gloomsday machine with of they explain that he can be as a villain because he's reserved for his criminal actions. Time for episode 67, the funny boogeyman, and it starts out with Pablo and Uniqua. And I know I never mentioned this before, but if you were to ask me which duo is my personal favorite in the Backyardigans, I would say Pablo and Uniqua because they are so chaotic and fun together. Anyways, they are known as the Boo Crew who are trying to catch scary creatures, and that's when they sing a song called the Boo Crew. Then they head over to a theater where there's a boogeyman that's inside, and that's Austin, who is a laughing boogeyman, and he's just having fun. He introduces himself and his funny things and his secret box of laughs, and he claims he's gonna only open it for comedy emergency, which alright. Anyways, because he's the boogeyman, he has the ability to sink through the floor or walk through the walls. Paul and Uniqua enter the theater and attempt to catch the creature. They make it to a hallway, and that's when they and Austin unnoticedly singing the song Find Me. Afterwards, they bump into each other, and because Austin was stacking things on his head, there was a bowl of spaghetti that falls onto the top of Uniqua and Pablo's head, and then it's haunted goo, so they scream and flee the theater. They decide to head back into the theater, but this time with cameras. And occasionally, we see Austin just making some jokes, just as Uniqua and Pablo make their way to the back of the theater. And then when Austin pops out of the vase, they spot him but struggle with the camera, and then they blind each other with the camera flash. Pablo and Uniqua are blind and they are frightened, so they flee the theater again. They then sing Catch That Boogeyman just as they enter the theater once again with a hoop that creates a trap for the boogeyman. They place the hoop on the stage and then hide behind the audience chairs. And we get another funny scene of assuming that Austin doesn't see them behind the chairs. And it cuts to Austin revealing that he can see them behind those chairs. A complete dichotomy to what Pablo and Uniqua assumed. So then Austin's show began and he just does some funny tricks with him either riding a unicycle and juggling, and then eventually stands in the hoop to which Pablo and Uniqua trapping him. And they celebrate just as Austin notices he's trapped and just sinks into the floor to escape from it, and that's when Pablo and Uniqua are terrified to see him escape their trap. And that's when Austin finally realizes that they were trying to catch him, not knowing he's a funny boogeyman, not a scary one. So then that's when he has to use his secret box of laughs, because it's a comedic emergency, and Pablo and Uniqua think it's over until Austin reveals what's inside the box. Giant shoes! And that's when he sings Giant Shoes. Afterwards, Pablo and Uniqua laugh along and realize that Austin was just a funny boogeyman, which clears up their misunderstanding. Anyways, my opinion is on par with many others' thoughts on this episode. Even though there were some fun bits, it was hard for me to kind of connect with this episode because we knew it was a misunderstanding and that it just needed to be cleared up when Austin reveals himself to be innocent. Time for the 68th episode. That's the place that Tyrone is going to be tour guiding at. And then Tyrone heads over to Old Gushy, which is inside a cavern. And that's the place that Tyrone is going to be tour guiding at. He showcases many small portions from areas that originate in the cavern. And then on a screen, he shows us Old Gushy, which is located at the bottom of the cavern, and it gushes lava. And so it does, just as he mentions it. But as the lava is gushing, its rattling causes a boulder to slowly roll down a tilted platform it's on, but is thankfully stopped by two small rocks barricading its path. Tyrone is relieved and explains what could happen if the boulder clogs up the gusher. The lava pressure will become too severe to the point where it breaks apart the earth and it will split it in half. Tyrone fears this could become the case, so he calls for superheroes, and that's when we're introduced to them. Uniqua, who is Princess Strong Blossom, Pirate Pablo, and Jungle Girl, who is Tasha. Tyrone explains the situation to them, and they vow to stop that boulder before it could cause any disaster. Then they sing I'm a Superhero, which involves them explaining their powers. Uniqua has super strength, Pablo can blow wind, and Tasha can act like any animal of her choosing. Just then, the boulder starts falling down the cavern, So everyone rides on a minecart to pursue it. This is where Jungle Girl tries to do something and she suggests that she'll fly like a bird to stop it, but she unthinkably chooses the power of an ostrich, which they don't fly. And Tyrone points this out just as Tasha leaps out of the minecart. She begins to fall down the cavern, so everyone else ride down the minecart to try and save her. This is when Tasha now thinks smartly and uses caterpillar power to stretch herself further to Tyrone's hand, and they're able to get her back into the minecart. So then they exit the minecart just as the boulder arrives and launches them into a room that's filled with speleobacterium, like the short portion of it that Tyrone was showcasing to us earlier. Anyways, they're stuck in it, but the boulder also gets stuck in it as well, so everyone is relieved at first, which I wonder how long that's gonna last. This is where Captain Pablo decides to use his power and he blows a tornado. It unstucks all of them, but it also accidentally sucks the boulder into it as well, unstucking it from the goo. They make it back to the main area and Pablo stops blowing the tornado just as they land safely, but the boulder is now back to falling into the gusher. They go down to the next level, and then they slide into an area that is slippery, and it's slip rock. Another thing Tyrone showed us a portion of in the beginning. The boulder is sliding towards them, and this time Unico tries to use her power of strength, but when she's trying to stop it, the rock is slippery, so it makes her slide along with it. This causes her to end up rolling onto the top of the boulder, and then everyone else gets onto it as well. But they're able to get off the boulder once Uniqua grabbed onto a stalactite. But then the worst case scenario happened and the boulder lands onto the gusher. Everyone is now panicking that the earth is now going to be in ruins. But Tyrone calms them down, reassuring them that they're superheroes, so they have the ability to prevent that from happening. And that's when they sing a song, "Superheroes for goodness sake." They head down to the final level to try and get the boulder out of the gusher. They each individually try to do something, but it's not working. So that's when Tyrone suggests that they work together to get the boulder out of the gusher. Tasha uses spider power to create a web string to pull the rock. We have Uniqua lift it with her super strength. And finally, we have Pablo blow it away and the gusher is unclogged. Everyone celebrates that Earth has been saved, and they all sing a song, Super Team Awesome, during which we see them consider Tyrone a superhero despite him just being a tour guide, but they think that because he was being such a good leading figure, he can be considered a hero as well. And that's the ending. I had such thrill with this episode, and it was interesting to see another superhero story. Episode 78, Big Tasha, who is a queen, and she's writing a message to deliver to King Austin. She sings a song called Queens Are Never Wrong, and then the backyard transforms into her castle. Then Uniqua comes in and Tasha instructs her to deliver her message to King Austin. She tells her that if she's successful with the delivery, she will become a knight. Uniqua thinks being a knight is easy, but Tasha warns her that she has to be brave enough to run through various places that could hinder her chances of getting to King Austin's castle. Uniqua shows her determination and is willing to deliver the message, so she takes off. In the foggy forest, Uniqua sings a message, which is a decent song. But then she runs into the Moose of the Mist, who is Tyrone, and he's frightened by the name until Uniqua reveals that he is the Moose of the Mist. Tyrone joins Uniqua on her quest, and she helps guide him out of the misty forest. This is when they come across a gate that's being guarded by Pablo. They ask him to open it, but he continues to say no. Billy decides to reason that he cannot even open it at all, which he pushes against it. But he never tried to pull the door, and that's when they attempted to pull it open, and they were successful with opening the gate. They allowed Pablo to join them on the quest so he could become a knight as well. Afterwards, they come across their final obstacle, which is the Stinky Swamp. They sing the song PU while using rocks as platforms to cross over the swamp. Then Uniqua uses one last boulder she pushes over to use as the final platform. But it begins sinking, so they have to make it out quickly. Uniqua and Tyrone make it out first, but Pablo is on the sinking platform and panics, but they eventually help him out. Then the trio flees as soon as a giant stinky bubble pops. Finally, they arrive at King Austin's castle, and he welcomes them in as he declares them as knights for being brave and strong. Before he gives them their helmets, they sing a song called The Ballad of the Brave Pink Knight. And now after he hands them their helmets, he reads the message Tasha written to him. and it shows a drawing of a pretzel and a juice, which indicates snack time. And the episode concludes like that. It's an enjoyable episode, as to say the least. Although this genre of music was something I didn't really click with the most, but it's still fun anyways. Moving on to episode 10, Viking Voyage, we have the trio again, Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone. And they are pretending to be Vikings to find a new land that has never been discovered before. They sing a fun song called If You Want to Be a Viking. Then before the Vikings leave, we see Tasha in the bushes overhearing their conversation. And she introduces to the viewers that she is a tough mermaid. Anyways, after that, the backyard transforms into the Viking Vale, and the Vikings sailing journey begins, which Tyrone reads a map that shows them the locations and obstacles that they're going to be facing along the way. Their first obstacle is going to be a doldrum, which is an area that lacks wind. Which, personal fact, my 8th grade teacher did not know about what a doldrum is, so when I explained what it is, she was delighted to learn from me. But anyway, and it starts off with Tasha and Austin, and they are cave people who say ugh. Then they sing a song about the word called 3 Cheers for Ugh. Then after singing, Tasha and Austin want to invite valley people to come to their cave because they want to howl at the moon when it hits the midnight peak. So Tasha invented an invitation which shows an illustration of all 5 of them howling into the moon. So she leaves it in the tree, and then that's where Austin and Tasha leave, just as the valley people, Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone appear. They see the invitation the cave people left for them, and that's when they embark on the journey, and this is where the backyard transforms into the new world. We first have the valley people and the cave people reprising the song 3 Cheers for Ugh. Then afterwards, we see the valley people walking up a big hill. And when they try to figure out how to go down the hill fast, Tyrone invents something called a sled, and they use it to slide down the hill faster. While waiting, the cave people invent something called drums, and then they play a song called the drumming song. Meanwhile, with the valley people, their sled stops sledding, so they have to get off and continue on foot. And that's where they come across an ice lake. And when they try to walk on it, they all slip and fall. But thankfully, Pablo invents something called skates, so they can skate across it easily. While skating on their way, they sing a song called Skate Ahead. Then we return with Tasha and Austin, who are getting concerned that the moon is almost at its highest peak and the valley people haven't arrived yet. After crossing the frozen lake, the valley people come across a big mountain that they have to get up, so thankfully Uniqua invents something called stairs. Meanwhile, with the cave people, they decide to invent something called arrow signs, so that way they can point the directions for the valley people to go to the cave. The valley people silently reach the top and they see the arrow signs, and that's where they follow it to where it leads to them to the cave party. And the valley people arrive just in time as the moon reaches its peak, so everyone howls at the moon. Afterwards, the cave people and the valley people sing a song called the Hokey Pokey, which is a fun version of the Hokey Pokey song. And that's how the episode ends. It was a pretty interesting episode of the characters inventing things to make sufficient use of them. For me, I never found this episode too memorable besides some certain scenes like Austin drumming and the Hokey Pokey, but overall, it's an okay episode, but not the most memorable in my opinion. Now let's get to the final episode of season 1, episode 20, High Tea, and boy, this is gonna be a great one. We have this little fun bit of Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone wanting to go on different adventures, which is something that we don't really see much in the Backyardigans. But anyways, after that, they spot Tasha sitting on a picnic table, and they decide to let her pick the adventure they'll go on. They ask her what she wants to do, and she says she wants to have a tea party, which they are not thrilled by it, but Tasha tries to express that on the contrary, it could be a fun adventure to go on. Then we get this enjoyable song, Perfect Cup of Tea, which I always love to sing to. And to have a perfect tea party, they need the right ingredients. So their first stop is going to be in the jungles of Borneo, and that's what the backyard transforms into. Tasha explains that she needs the perfect kind of gold leaf, but it's hard to find with billions of trees surrounding them. They do climb up a tree, and then they discover that they can zip across tree to tree to find the perfect gold leaf. And this is when they sing Tree to Tree, which I also love singing to too. Like, let's go zipping through the trees of Borneo, and they say, wee, zip, zip, zip from tree to tree. But anyways, Tasha finds the golden leaves, and then after that, Tasha explains that they need to borrow a tea set, so their next stop is going to be at the Emperor's Castle. which the Emperor is obviously going to be played by Austin because everyone else is there but him. At the Emperor's front door, Tasha continues to ring his doorbell until he gets a noise and yells who dares to ring his doorbell. After they introduce themselves, he lets them in and then they discover that he's grumpy. When Tasha asks to borrow his tea set, he takes a while to think until he responds with no. And they ask him why he's grumpy, and he explains that he always sits in his throne every day and it gets him annoyed. So they try to find a way to make him laugh so they could get the tea set. So they sing a song, The Grumpy Emperor, and during the song, they try in various ways to make Austin laugh. Tyrone tries to juggle, but he fails. Tasha tries to do a funny dance, but she fails. And Pablo makes a funny face, but he also is not successful as well. The situation seems dire at first until Uniqua makes her attempt, which is a knock-knock joke, which is obviously the knock-knock joke of banana, banana who, until she ends with aren't you glad you didn't say banana? Which it gives Austin a second to realize what the joke was until he starts giggling and bursting out laughing. And that's when Tasha asks to borrow the tea set once again and he accepts it. Afterwards, Tasha explains the final thing they need is hot water, and their final stop is going to be the gushing geyser of the Gobi Desert. And through this, Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone realize that the adventure is starting to be more fun and thrilling than what they'd ever expect. 4 of them arrive at the Gobi Desert and they spot the gushing geyser. Afterwards, Tasha explains that after 3 rumbles, the geyser will gush. Then it won't gush until the next day, which Pablo panics at first, but Tasha calms him down because she spots a herd of Mongolian ponies that they could use to get to the geyser quick. And before they rode one of the ponies, the first rumble hits. And then after that, when they are on the ponies, the second rumble hits, and that's when they have to move quick. And as they ride the ponies to the geyser, they sing a song Gallop, which I also love as well, which showcases the brilliance this episode has with its batch of songs. They arrive just in time for Tasha to put the golden leaf inside the kettle and put it on top of the geyser just as the third rumble takes place and the hot water is gushed out of the geyser. Tasha retrieves the tea kettle and pours everyone a cup of tea, and Austin joins by and brought some sugar as well. After sipping their cup of tea, they reprise the song Perfect Cup of Tea, and that's when Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone admit that the adventure was what they wanted all together combined. And to conclude with all of this episode was definitely a perfect ending to season 1, especially because Tasha was the central to run through various places. It takes good luck to look strong. Overhearing their conversation, and they are pretending to be Vikings to find a new land that has never been discovered before. They sing a fun song called If You Want to Be a Viking. Then before the Vikings leave, we see Tasha in the bushes overhearing their conversation. And she introduces to the viewers that she is a tough mermaid. Anyways, after that, the backyard transforms into the Viking sail and the Viking sailing journey begins, which Tyrone reads a map that shows them the locations and obstacles that they're going to be facing along the way. Their first obstacle is going to be a doldrum, which is an area that lacks wind. Which, personal fact, my 8th grade teacher did not know about what a doldrum is, so when I explained what it is, she was delighted to learn from me. But anyways, the trio reach the doldrum and they have to row their boat to continue on the journey. They are worn out by rowing until they've left the doldrum. The wind is back to blow their sail. Next, they come across a stormy area that has rocks blocking their way, to which all 3 of them steer the ship to avoid every rock that's barricading their path. But they successfully steer the ship and leave the rocky region. And after they leave, Tasha has been observing everything and sings a song called Extra Extra Tough, which is her bragging about how tough a mermaid like her is. Back with the Viking trio, they have one last obstacle that was on their map, which is a raging whirlpool. They spot the whirlpool, but it's too late for them to steer around us, so their ship is floating right into it, and they spin around repeatedly, and they sing this famous song, Hold Tight, which I really love. Vikings are hanging on tight on their ship to avoid flying out of it. As soon as the ship reaches the center of the whirlpool, it launches them back onto the normal surface of the ocean and they continue on. Without any more obstacles that are on the map, the Vikings are confident that they'll be able to find a new land until Tasha comes by. And every time they try to row around her, she has the tough muscles to stop their entire Viking ship. The Vikings are about to surrender until Tyrone figures out an idea to sing a lullaby to Tasha. So the Vikings sing a peaceful song called Rockabilly Lullaby, to which it gets Tasha to fall asleep. And as soon as she snoozes, the Vikings take the opportunity to row away from her, and that's where their journey continues. They finally reach the land that they've been wanting to find, which has never been discovered before. They dub the land Sandland as they mark drawings of their faces in the sand. The episode concludes with them having snacks, with Tasha joining by as well. This was a pretty thrilling episode, as you were expecting many obstacles to hinder the Vikings' journey, but they were able to find ways to successfully evade them. We jump to episode 11, Castaways, and boy am I so ready to talk about this one. So it starts off with Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone being castaways on a deserted island. They are confident that they are the only castaways on the island, until we see behind the gate that Austin's another castaway, but he has been feeling a little shy to even say hi to them. And this is when we get to the most trending songs on TikTok ever back in 2021, Castaways, which is a really good beat in my opinion, although I don't really listen to it as much as other songs in the Backyardigans, but either way, this is one of the top favorite songs for many viewers who watched. Kind of butterfly that he wants to catch is a gilded golden butterfly. And so he sings the song, The Gilded Golden Butterfly, and then afterwards the backyard transforms into a natural landscape. He's having problems trying to catch the butterfly until Stagecoach, driven by Tyrone and Uniqua, pass by him. He takes the opportunity to ask them to give him a ride to find the butterfly. Tyrone and Uniqua ask him what he wants to catch. We get this funny scene of Pablo continuing to describe about it but not name it until Tyrone loses his patience and says, "Just say it!" Pablo says he's catching a butterfly and the stagecoaches are just laughing at him, but they're still willing to give Pablo a ride and they sing a song, We're Tough. Afterwards, they drag their stagecoaches with their horses in front of them, and Pablo is struggling to catch the butterfly every time he swings his net at it, to the point where the horses would run up a steep mountain, scaring Tyrone and Uniqua. But they make it onto the top, and Pablo gets out of the stagecoach to try and catch the butterfly. Uniqua and Tyrone come off too to check him out, but then the butterfly lands on one of the horse's nose, and despite Uniqua and Tyrone's warnings, Pablo is way too resolute on getting the butterfly that he swings his net on the horse's nose that startles them, and then they start running away. The three of them run after it and are able to hop into the stagecoach, but nobody is driving it, and then that's when the horses detach themselves from the stagecoach that crashes into a giant rock, sending them flying into a river. And while it's floating on the river, it continues to hit many rocks around it, which causes many parts of it to break, leaving just the chairs remaining. And they do sing a song, How Hard Can It Be? But afterwards, just as Pablo is about to jump and catch the butterfly in his net, the three of them fall down a waterfall, but thankfully they're okay and they swim back to land. And Pablo begins climbing the rock wall, followed by the stagecoaches. They reach the top and then they sing The Butterfly Hunt, and I love the opera tune it uses. They then make it onto a rocky platform that's on a ledge of a cliff. And the butterfly is flying around it, and Pablo tries to catch it, but is going too close to the edge. But when the butterfly sits on the edge, it causes the rock to tumble, and the three of them are now on the rock that's sliding down the cliff. And once it lands on the ground, it begins breaking into small particles until it's fully disintegrated, to the point where everyone is just dazed by the uneasy landing. And that's when they discover that the butterfly is on Pablo's beak. And Pablo panics when he says the butterfly is on his very nose, but Tyrone and Uniqua remind him that he needs to catch it, so he grabs his jar and puts it in, finally catching the butterfly. Then he opens the jar lid and lets the gilded golden butterfly fly free, and the stagecoaches are confused at first, but Pablo explains that he just wanted to catch it but not keep it, similar to how Tasha wanted to catch a whopper but not keep it. That's the end. This is another episode that I never really fully clicked with. It is fun at points, but sometimes I never pay too much close attention to this episode to find it memorable, so yeah. Now for the finale of Season 2, Episode 40, which is A Giant Problem. And we begin with Tasha, who's going to be a giant. And then she sings, Nobody's bigger than a giant. It's such an amazing song. And then afterwards, the backyard transforms into a land that has trees, a small village, and a castle where the queen lives. Tasha reprises the song Nobody's Bigger Than the Giant as she stomps through the forest. Then the scene checks into the village where we are introduced to the wizards, Tyrone and Pablo, and they're trying to get a spell right. Their first attempt is with their hat, but they fail, and Pablo's hat lands on his tail while Tyrone's hat is on his nose. Then they sing a song, It's Hard to Be a Wizard. Then after that, they get a call, which is from the queen, who is Uniqua, and she orders them to come to her castle quick. So they try to cast a spell of them going to the castle, but when they do, they end up appearing on the top of a castle pole. It takes them a while to get off until they enter Uniqua's castle, to which she questions what took them so long. They have so much excuses, but she silenced them. Uniqua points out that there's a giant in the forest and she's about to take her royal naps, and she doesn't want the giant stomping to disturb her, so she is electing the wizards to get rid of Tasha. The wizards go out to find a way to get rid of Tasha. They try to practice various spells that would end up landing them back into Uniqua's castle, to which she gets annoyed by them, and then they get really tired of it, so they try to rest. So they find what looks like to be a rock and sit on it. But then when Tyrone looks up, he realizes it's not a rock. They were sitting on Tasha's shoe. She says, "You who?" And the wizards are frightened and they try to run away from her. But they stop and sing a song called I Know a Spell, to which they cast various spells at Tasha, to when one causes her to fall asleep. And when they try to get her to disappear, they disappear themselves. Then they try another spell of sending her away, but they end up sending themselves away to various locations, to which one of them ends up being inside Queen Uniqua's castle. And she just gives this hilarious silent expression of what the heck are you doing here? But they're able to cast a spell to return back to where Tasha was, but they appear on her head and she's already awake. So they get terrified and they fall into a nearby lake, and then they try to run away as Tasha tries to catch them. They try to cast a spell for horses to speed up, but they end up being the horses, and so Tasha starts to chase them, and the horse wizards are running towards Queen Uniqua's castle, where Uniqua is just standing there and is witnessing everything. And she instructs them that if they don't get rid of the giant, then she's gonna get rid of them. They turn themselves back to their normal selves. Tyrone comes up with his idea of using the same size spell, but Pablo thinks it's so difficult, but they do make the attempt. So they cast the same size spell towards Tasha, and they are bubbles that come towards her, but she thinks they're just playing with her, so she blows the bubbles back at them, and they try to run away from it, but it pops on them, and now the wizards grow big into a giant themselves. They are shocked until Tasha chases them and then plays tag with them, and that's when the wizards realize Tasha is just an innocent giant that's trying to find some friends to play with. So they do play with her, but they worry about how Uniqua's going to react to this, and that's when Tyrone and Pablo figure an idea. We get this humorous scene of Uniqua thinking that it's finally peace and quiet as she lays down on her bed, and then this giant stomps rumble her castle, and she just is like, never mind. She goes to inspect to only find out that the wizards are giants as well, and she orders them to put her down after they take her out of the window. Then the wizards cast a spell to make Uniqua a giant too. Wizards celebrate that they finally got a spell right, and Uniqua is happy because she can sleep anytime now. Tasha plays tag with her new friends, and this is when we get another top tier song that's ever been played on Backyardigans, On Top of the World, and it's so great. I even made a short of me dancing to this, showcasing that this is one of the better songs of the Backyardigans. And with that, the finale of season 2 ends. This episode was pretty interesting as it kind of shifted the roles of Uniqua and Tasha, because Tasha would normally be the bossy and grateful one of the two, but this time they let Uniqua take over that role and Tasha be the innocent one, which I like that. Now we're gonna move on to season 3. Tale of the Mighty Knight, and this is the DVD I have, which obviously contains the 2 parts of Tale of the Mighty Knights, also featuring Blazing Paddles and Garbage Shrek. So this is why I have a lot of nostalgia for these episodes. So we start with Uniqua and Tyrone, and they are the brave knights of King Pablo's castle. They both sing a cool song, "We're Knights," which I like. Then they head to King Pablo's castle, and we see him struggling to get his crown off his head, but his knights are able to help him out. Pablo informs them that he plans to go to the crown shop to buy a new crown, and then he tells them that he has a task for them, to which they sing a song, "A Challenge," which is another top tier song as well. He presents their task, which is to be egg sitters, meaning that they have to guard his egg. So after Pablo leaves to buy a new crown, the egg begins to roll off and roll away while saying "whap whap." The knights try to stop it, but it eventually rolls out of the castle and into the river where it begins to float away. Then the knights get on their horses and chase after it. But at some point, they have to pass by the crown shop where Pablo's at, and they are able to sneak past him unnoticed. Then we return to the egg, which floats right onto the doorstep of the grabbing goblin, who is Austin. He finds the egg and decides to bring it into his home. The knights arrive at his home and assume that he must have taken the egg, and then they break into his home where they are just walking through the dark passageway, to which periodically the goblin is snatching their things like their hats, their shields, and their flashlights. Then we have the scene of Goblin in his room, which is full of things that he has stolen, to where he sings the song Goblin, and I love the part where he plays on the electric guitar while singing the lyrics, "Oh the things, oh the things." The knights finally arrive and get their knight gear back, and then they ask him to give them back the egg, but he refuses to. So he attempts to run away, which I should also mention he has the ability to run on the ceiling while upside down, which is fascinating. So the knights chase him on a canoe and eventually catches up to him and get the egg back. But Austin jumps on the canoe and tries to take the egg away. Tyrone gets grip of it, and then there's a back and forth between Tyrone and Austin trying to take the egg back until Unico realizes they're approaching a waterfall. But Austin's able to grab onto a root in the ceiling with the Mighty Knights holding onto him as well. And part 1 ends like that on its exciting cliffhanger. But in the DVD version, there was no cliffhanger and the scene continued on. So when I watched this episode on the television airing, the cliffhanger was something unexpected to me because I was not familiar with it compared to watching the DVD version of the episode. So let's go to part 2 where they're stuck hanging onto something while a waterfall is below them. And then Austin's nose begins to get itchy, but he doesn't have a hand free to scratch it, so Unico tries to get it. But then once Austin helps her hand, he realizes the hand he used was the one that he was holding onto the roof, so then they are all falling down. Thankfully, it was just water below, and they're able to swim back onto land. And while swimming back to it, they see the egg now pops out legs, and it starts to run away. They now exit the cave and are back in the forest, and then they're met with the flighty fairy, who is Tasha, and she found the egg and wants to keep it as well. Then she uses her magic wand to play around with the egg, and then she sings the song Twiddly-dee, which I enjoy it. Then Austin is able to snatch her wand and tries to use it on the egg, and it almost falls until it sprouts wings and it flies towards Dragon Mountain. As they hike to the Dragon Mountain, they sing a song, Dragon Mountain, and the beat is good. They enter the interior of the mountain and they see that there's a lot of rocks and lava inside. Austin is able to spot the egg on top of a big rock, and so Tasha flies up to it and brings it down, but it turns out it's empty. And then a large dragon pops up. Everyone is terrified and they scramble into different directions. Then all 4 of them find an exit together and run out, but it turns out it's a dead end and there's a ledge. But the dragon scares them and they fall off the edge and they think it's over, but then the dragon comes to save them, and that's when they realize that it was the dragon that was in the egg. He was able to grow up quick. Then we get this cool song, I'm Not an Egg Anymore, which parts of the song are sang by Adam Pascal. Very interesting. Then the dragon returns everyone back to King Pablo's castle where he is returning, and he sees them and also sees that his egg hatched the dragon. Everyone tries to explain what happened with the egg, but Pablo tells them that he knew a dragon was in there and needed the knights to be brave and strong to handle it. And that's the end of this special. It's so nostalgic to rewatch this because number 3. That's the ending for that episode. Episode 59, The Two Musketeers, and we start off with Tyrone and Pablo, and they are the Musketeers. Then they sing a song, It's Great to Be a Musketeer, during which they reveal that their biggest dislike is the Empress because she has a hot air balloon. Afterwards, the backyard transforms into a nice natural landscape, and then the Musketeers have to hide from the Empress's guards, who are Austin and Uniqua, and they're searching for the Musketeers to arrest them. The Musketeers do jump out of hiding and battle those guards with balloon swords. They take their battle to a bridge until a third Musketeer comes out of nowhere, which we know is Tasha, and she deflates her balloon to distract the guards. They hide underneath the bridge, and then Tasha asks if she can become a Musketeer. But Pablo and Tyrone don't think that's true because only 2 Musketeers make sense. And then the 3 of them sing a song, number 3. After that, the 2 Musketeers leave Tasha and she's just devastated. Then the guards spot them again by a windmill, and then another balloon sword battle ensues. Then Tasha comes by again, but this time she distracts the guard by dueling them in manners. The guards are distracted just as Tasha takes the chance to hide Pablo and Tyrone on top of the nearby windmill. They mock the guards for working with the Empress. Tasha questions why they even dislike her, to which they sing a song, We Don't Care for the Empress. They return back to the ground and Tasha asks them again if she can be a musketeer, but they reject her. So she leaves, which would be a big mistake for them as the guards arrive and cuff them. We then cut to the Empress Palace where the musketeers are locked up in a jail cell. The guards are satisfied and they sing a song in the name of the Empress. The guards leave and then that's where Tasha comes back to rescue the 2 musketeers. She uses a key to unlock the cell and then the 3 of them sneak out of the palace. But midway in their escape from the palace, the guards spot the musketeers and question how did they even escape. Tasha creates a wild poodle which is actually made of a balloon to distract the guards and is able to get the 2 musketeers to run away with her. They make it outside and spot the Empress's hot air balloon, so they decide to take it as their escape vehicle. And this is when the boys finally accept Tasha as a musketeer, but as they do, the guards are able to pull on a rope connected to the balloon and they pull it back down to the surface. The guards order them out of the balloon and says the Empress will be pleased when they are all arrested. And Tasha says, oh, the Empress will be pleased, alright. Which confuses everyone at first, and then that's when Tasha takes off her mask and hat and reveals herself to be the Empress. Everyone is shocked and the musketeers realize that they do like the Empress. They apologize for how they disrespected her and Tasha accepts their apology. This was a fine episode. Definitely not the biggest standout of these group of very strong episodes lately. But I did have fun with Tasha being a third mysterious musketeer and in the end revealing that she was the Empress. Time for the finale of Season 3. Wow, this was a good season. So let's review on episode 60, The Masked Retriever. And it starts out with Uniqua, and she's a librarian. And she also reveals another side of her is if there's an overdue library book and the person doesn't return it, she becomes the Masked Retriever so she could retrieve the book. She sings The Masked Retriever and then she heads over to her library, which is located in a small town in California. Uniqua shows off her library books and that's when Tasha appears to return some books. And that's when the 2 of them sing the song, I Love the Library. Afterwards, Tasha is trying to find a book about cats, but Uniqua checks and discovers that someone has already borrowed it, and that is Austin, who goes by Don Austin, who is the most important person of the town. Nico sees that the book is about to be overdue, so she hopes that Don Austin is able to return it on time. And that's when she sees Don Austin's carriage rolling by the library and she decides to confront him. She asks him that he needs to return the book, but he refuses to. And despite being told that it's an overdue library book, he does not care and he asks his guards, Pablo and Tyrone, to drive him away. Then Uniqua and Tasha sing a song called I'm Going to Get That Book Back. Then afterwards, Tasha points out that one person has the ability to get that book back, and that's the Masked Retriever. To which when Tasha's back is turned, Uniqua goes through a secret entrance located underneath her desk and goes to dress as the Masked Retriever. She gets on her horse and she's on her way to retrieve that book back. Then we check in with Don Austin's guards who are guarding his gate, and they are discussing about the worries of the masked retriever appearing. And that's when Pablo opts to warn Austin about it, so he heads inside, leaving Tyrone alone to guard the gate. And as soon as Tyrone walks away from the gate for a bit, Uniqua takes the chance to sneak into it and leave a black checkmark on it, which shocks Tyrone. She sneaks into Don Austin's room just to witness a conversation with him and Pablo, where he is warned about the masked retriever. He claims he's not afraid of her and will not return the book, so he plans for him and his guards to leave to Mexico that night. And now Don Austin is in his carriage being driven to Mexico by his guards, and then he spots the masked retriever on her horse following them. She's able to catch up with Don Austin's carriage and stop his horses from progressing. Don Austin flees his carriage with the book and runs towards an abandoned building with a bell on top. His guards try to stop the masked retriever from chasing him, but she distracts them and leaves black checkmarks on them, to which they scream. Don Austin reaches the top floor of the abandoned building, and the masked retriever orders him to return the book, and he's like, never! So the masked retriever makes her way to the top of the building, and we see Don Austin just quietly reading the book until she pops up and corners him. She says the line, I am the masked retriever and you have an overdue book, which scares Austin to the corner until he breaks that he did not finish it. And that's when he clarifies that he has not finished the book and he really likes it, but it's so long that he cannot finish reading it under the limited time. And that's when the masked retriever reveals that he can just go to the library and renew the book. She explains to him that if he renews his book, he'll have more time to finish reading it and then return it before it's overdue. So Don Austin is on his way back to the library just as Uniqua makes it there on time and changes back into her librarian attire. And so Don Austin arrives and asks for his book to be renewed, and Uniqua accepts. Afterwards, they all sing a song, A Happy Ending. And with all of that, that's the finale of Season 3. My opinions on this episode, it was enjoyable. It was pretty captivating because I was always interested to see how Uniqua was going to get the book back under the masked retriever disguise. And in the end, no one was able to figure out that the librarian was the masked retriever. Now we enter our final season. Get to episode 69, which is Breakout, and it starts out with Tasha and Uniqua and their princesses trapped to the top of the tower. So now they have a mission to bust out of the tower, and they sing a song, Break Out, before the backyard transforms into the castle where they are in. So we see them in their room trying to plan out their ways to break out of the castle, and we see them have a map to outline how they're gonna get out, and they also have a magic mirror who is Austin. And he's very useful with instructing them where to go and alerting them if there's a guard nearby. And then that's when we're met with our guards, Pablo and Tyrone, and they are serving the princesses crumpets. After the guard leaves, the princesses pull out a piece of the wall that opens up a secret passageway, and they make their ways into the main area. Just then, we have Pablo and Tyrone viewing all the security cameras located around the castle, and then the two of them sing, You Can't Get Out of Here. Then we see Uniqua and Tasha communicate with Austin just as he reveals that there are guards coming towards them, so they have to hide. Afterwards, Uniqua uses her hair, which fires a grappling hook onto the chandelier, and swing her and Tasha to the third floor. And I'm surprised Pablo and Tyrone didn't notice that when it's clearly out in the open. But anyways, the princesses are on the third floor, and then they make their way into the grand hallway, which is filled with laser beams, and Austin explains that if they touch one, it'll set off an alarm that will alert the guards. So then afterwards, while Uniqua and Tasha are passing through the lasers, they sing another iconic song, Dance for Your Life, and I just love it. Their singing voice actors did a marvelous job with this song, especially the parts where like, dance, dance, dance for your life, and after that, they both make it across all the laser beams, but then Tasha's dress accidentally backs into one, which sets off the alarms, and the guards are alerted. And then that's when they find out that the princesses have escaped, so they're now after them. The princesses make their way onto the secret staircase, but then they're surrounded by Tyrone and Pablo, who are chasing after them in both directions, but conveniently there's a door behind them because they're now on the second floor, and they try to push in and struggle a bit, but they're able to make it in just at the final minute before Tyrone and Pablo can even catch them. They run towards an elevator and make their ways in and close it just before Tyrone and Pablo can make it into it. They see that the princesses are on their way to the first floor, so they make their way to the first floor and wait for them there. Which I'm surprised that the elevator was going a little slow, because I'm pretty sure the princesses would have made it onto the first floor before the guards would have even made it. But anyways, the princesses do some smart thinking as they realize that guards could intercept them once the elevator door opens. So they go through the ceiling of the elevator and hide on the roof of it just as it reaches level 1, and the guards are ready to capture the princesses, but they're not there, so they assume they must have already escaped. Afterwards, the princesses jump back into the elevator and try to leave it, but then Tasha accidentally slips the magic mirror out of her pocket and it lands next to Pablo. He assumes it's a mirror and opens it and sees Austin, and now he assumes that that's not his reflection, but Austin tries to make it believe it, and we get this funny scene of Pablo making some silly faces while Austin trying to imitate them to make him believe that he is the so-called mirror. Pablo does buy into it, but Tyrone snatches the mirror out of his hands and figures that it was a magic mirror that the princesses were using for help. He demands Austin for answers, but Austin refuses to give them anything and instructs the princesses to run. So then another chase ensues, and we get this song, "The Chase is On." And I just love the guards' vocals in this song. But the princesses do make it to the final room, which is filled with armor, and they hide behind one that has a giant shield. Pablo and Tyrone assume that they're hiding behind one, so Tyrone tries to get answers from Austin, but he refuses to say anything until he indirectly spills, and the princesses are now ordered to come out of hiding. And it seems dire at first until Austin instructs them to look up, and that's when the princesses transform their slippers into rocket slippers, shocking Tyrone and Pablo just as they snatch the magic mirror back, and then they fly through the glass ceiling and use their dresses as parachutes. Pablo and Tyrone lower the drawbridge and try to come after them, but when they're they're too short to make it to land and fall into the moat. Just as the princesses land and are about to leave, they hear the guards struggling in the waters and decide to help them despite them not really wanting to. They help the guards out of the water and think that it's over, but the guards reveal that it's okay for them to leave because they escaped them fair and square. And that's the conclusion of that episode. Another top tier personal favorite of mine, just because I love Tasha and Uniqua's dynamic, and it was fun to see them find many ways to escape out of the tower they were in. And on par with Mission to Mars, this episode has the batch of some of the best songs I've ever heard. Now for episode 70, the Action Elves save Christmas Eve, and it focuses on Tasha, Uniqua, and Pablo, and they are elves working for Santa Claus. They sing Action Elves just as they head over to Santa's workshop, and they head over to their secret underground workshop where Santa calls them, who is voiced by Conan O'Brien, and he does fine, but anyways, Santa explains that his sack has been stolen by the Abominable Brothers, who's obviously going to be Tyrone and Austin. He instructs them to retrieve it back, and if they don't, there will be no Christmas. So the elves get to action and ride their rocket horse. We cut to the Abominable Brothers, who are struggling to bring the sack up the hill, and they're tired. Then all of a sudden, the sack is magic and it turns into a sleigh. So they ride it up to get to their igloo. But as they're flying, the Action Elves spot them and follow them on their rocket horse. We get a little fun chase sequence until the Action Elves crashes into a bank of snow. The Abominable Brothers make it to their igloo, and then they sing a song, The Magic Sack, as they have a lot of fun with the magic sack, and then they bring it into their igloo home and turn it into a couch. Back with the Action Elves, they craft their broken rocket horse into a triple ski so the three of them can ski together to the igloo. Once they arrive, they craft a jack-in-a-box to eject them onto the roof of the igloo, and they use a candy cane to ring the doorbell while leaving them a toy robot to distract them with. The brothers fall for it and they chase after the toy robot just as the Action Elves enter their igloo and change the couch back to the magic sack. As they are exiting, their phone rings and it's a call from Santa, which I forgot to mention. He does that occasionally throughout this episode to check in on what's going on with his elves. But the brothers hear the ringing phone and they spot the elves retrieving the magic sack. So the brothers snatch it back and then they have a snowball fight with the elves while singing Snowball Fight. Afterwards, the five of them fall down a snow cliff, and that's when the phone rings again, and this time the Abominable Brothers answer it despite the elves protesting. They answer the phone and realize that it's Santa on the other end. He explains that they are trying to get the magic sack back, and that's when the brothers realize it belonged to Santa. So they hand back the sack to the elves and they decide to join them to fill the sack with toys. And then we get another top tier song, To Fill a Sack, which is their version of the 12 Days of Christmas. But in the Backyardigans version, they only sing for 7, not 12. Anyways, they're able to fill up the sack and give it to Santa, and he flies off in his sleigh to deliver the presents. This was another cool episode because I like how they decided to do another Christmas themed episode, but this time Santa was involved, which was a cool element added to this episode. Now we get into episode 71, Los Galacticos. And we start off with Tasha, Tyrone, and Pablo, and they are a band called Los Galacticos. They sing a song called Los Galacticos, introducing themselves and showing what instrument they play. They then final episode production-wise. Episode 80, The Tale of the Not-So-Nice Dragon. And for the first time, we have an adventure that is a direct sequel to a previous one. This one is of the sequel to Tale of the Mighty Knights. But this time we begin with Austin and Tasha. They reintroduce their roles and are planning to go to Pablo's castle for a tea party, and they are bringing mini muffins. Then the two of them sing, It's a Wonderful Day for Tea. And then for the final time, the backyard transforms into the front entrance of Pablo's castle. And at this moment, many people point this out, and so will I. Austin's the grabbing goblin, but he is not green this time. But anyways, they're on their way to Pablo's castle, and this is where Tasha uses her wand to turn bigger. Then Pablo suddenly runs out of his castle screaming, and they join in to hide behind a bush, and that's when they discover that he's running away from a scary dragon. Pablo explains that the only way for it to turn nice is if you grab on its tail and hold on to it for 10 seconds. So then Pablo instructs his mighty knights, Uniqua and Tyrone, to do it, but they fail to and they're thrown into the moat. Pablo comes over and orders the mean dragon to leave his knights alone, but then the dragon kidnaps the three of them and they are now being carried to Dragon Mountain. Pablo screams for Austin and Tasha to help them because they're their only hope. And we see the dragon toss Uniqua, Pablo, and Tyrone into a cave and barricade them in with rocks. Austin and Tasha wonder how they're going to even help because they are not nice. They're just a fairy and a goblin. And they sing, We're Not Knights, before Tasha comes up with an idea of getting help from Dragon, the one that hatched from Pablo's egg in the Mighty Knights. So Tasha uses her wand and they get to his cave where they reunite with him. They explain the situation to him and he helps fly them to the evil dragon's mountain. We return with Pablo, Tyrone, and Uniqua, and then they sing a song, We're Stuck in a Cave, before the three of them spot Austin, Tasha, and Dragon arriving to save them. But the evil dragon is guarding the way, so they have to try and quietly fly around him to help free the king and the knights. But then Dragon starts to get startled, and that alerts the evil dragon that someone is helping the king and the knights, and then he chases after them, and that forces Austin, Tasha, and Dragon to fly away. They hide somewhere and they admit that they weren't being calm in that moment. But Austin tries to brag that he was the calmest, to which Tasha disagrees. But Austin yells that he was really calm, which Austin, you were doing anything but. But his yelling caught the attention of Evil Dragon, so they have to fly away from him again. It's a suspenseful chase that leads to the Evil Dragon getting stuck at the entrance of King Pablo's castle. So now that he's stuck, it bought Austin, Tasha, and Dragon some time to help save their friends. So they return and try to move the rocks out of the way. Evil Dragon is able to unstuck himself out of the castle doorway and makes his way back to his mountain. And that's when Pablo comes up with the idea of Austin grabbing the Evil Dragon's tail because he's the grabbing goblin. So they distract the evil dragon with mini muffins, and that's where Austin takes the chance to grab onto his tail. The evil dragon realizes this and tries to throw Austin off, but because of his trait of being the grabbing goblin, he's able to hold on for 10 seconds, and that's where the evil dragon transforms into a nice one, and he starts by moving the barricading rocks to free Pablo, Uniqua, and Tyrone. So now everyone and the new Nice Dragon come over for tea at Pablo's castle. Pablo declares that Austin and Tasha's reward should be mini muffins, and that's when they all sing the final song, Mini Muffins for the Major Heroes. And it's a decent concluding song, and we see everyone enjoying the tea party with Dragon and Nice Dragon. And that's the conclusion for the final episode. And this was a fun episode, so thrilling and such a suspenseful storyline all the way. And you can feel some type of emotion with this episode, especially the final part where they go have snack and the scene ends for the final time. This was just such a grand conclusion to this amazing masterpiece of a series. So with that, I finally talked about every episode of this series. And to reiterate, this was just a masterpiece of a series. And I want this video to be an appreciation for the people who made this show,